Zoe, do take a note of synergistic umami. There'll be a test at the end. Yes. Jeremy Tang.
It's a pressure cooker air fryer combo to make a homemade crispy aromatic duck.
So what, you cook it first in the...
You can do it in 45 minutes, 30 minutes in the pressure cooker, and then take it out, dab it dry, whack it in the air fryer for 15 minutes, and you've honestly got the best crispy duck and pancakes that you would have, better than a restaurant.
Oh, that's clever. Annie Gray.
Split mayonnaise. Everybody says, oh, just get another egg yolk and pour it all in. Oh my goodness, why bother? Most of the time, you have to do it with a really, really chilled bit of water. Take it in very chilled water and whisk it like for really like.
Zoe, I hope you recall all of those hacks when you come up with split mayonnaise or you need an emergency aromatic crispy duck. That's all we've got time for today, and indeed for this series. Fear not, we'll be back in May full of the joys of spring. Until then, do stay in touch. You can email us your tales, tips, photos, promising your kitchen triumphs, disasters, you do nothing disaster, to tkc@bbc.co.uk. But for now, it's goodbye from me, Jay Rayner, Andy Oliver, Tim Anderson, Jeremy Tang, Dr. Annie Gray, and our audience here in Edgware.
The Kitchen Cabinet was produced by Dom Tyler. The assistant producer was Dulcie Watkell. This is Something Else production for BBC Radio 4. Stouts and porters, those dark malty beers are growing in popularity. The food programme asks why that is at 12:30 tomorrow afternoon. On BBC Radio 4 Extra.
Oh, moon, lovely moon with a beautiful face. Careering throughout the boundless of space.
Across the night of the full moon.
I looked up at the sky and saw a huge, egg-white moon.
Join me, Dr. Henry Fogg, as I travel through the BBC archive and explore fascination. I'm trying to get the book at the far end. Moonlight, which is Command Night at 10, and then Cooking the Night on Radio 4 Extra, BBC Sounds. As we know, there's no election here, plenty of issues to discuss, and the audience never decides something easy. We're group journalists with Stu Richards guiding us today. Big in Westminster, he's in a couple of minutes on Radio 4.
BBC News at 11 o'clock. Russian security services say at least 140 people are now known to have been killed in yesterday's attack on the four Moscow. Four people suspected of being directly involved in the project have been arrested along with 7 others. The Islamic State group says it carried out the attack, a claim which the United States says is credible. The US also says that no evidence Ukraine is involved. President Putin's advisor, Sergei Lavrov,
It's very much different. It's a traditional attack of the Bosnians. Usually it's always taking hostages and make some demands. Here, what comes and will be another style. The walls and the captured on the border near my border Ukraine. It's in Russia it's more or less clear that this terrorist attack is organized from Ukraine in Chechnya.
Ukraine has denied any involvement and has suggested the attack was a deliberate act of provocation by the Russian authorities. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who's arrived at the border between Gaza and Egypt, is calling again for a humanitarian ceasefire. There are warnings of an imminent famine and hundreds of lorries with basic supplies are waiting to enter the territory. The report suggests the number of people leaving the workforce due to long-term sickness is at its highest since the 1990s. The Revolution Foundation says adults deemed economically inactive because of ill health rose from 2.1 million in 2019 to 2.8 million last October. The government says its recent budget measures should boost the labour force by 300,000 workers. The Indian Navy says 35 pirates who were captured off the coast of Somalia have been taken to Mumbai to stand trial. They were detained a week ago when Indian naval commandos recaptured a hijacked ship. There have been worldwide messages of support for the Princess of Wales after she announced she was being treated for cancer. President Biden said he was praying for her full recovery, while President Macron said her strength and resilience would inspire everyone. BBC News.
Timor-Leste in Southeast Asia faces many challenges, economic and social, but marine scientists have of it lies on a vast migration route for ocean wildlife. Their hopes it could contribute to the fledgling tourism industry. That'll be just one of the stories from our correspondents around the world, which we'll hear in half an hour. First on Radio 4, Steve Richards is joined by a panel of Westminster watchers to take stock of the political landscape.
Hello and welcome to a special week in Westminster, where as the Easter recess approaches, we have the chance to step back a bit, delve deep into where we all are in this highly charged election year. With windows circling over what for our Rishi Sunak, Reform UK breathing down the Tories' necks according to some opinion polls, and continuing questions being asked about Labour's readiness for government, there's a lot to discuss. And to do so, joined by the editor of The Spectator, Fraser Nelson, Whitehall editor of The Financial Times, Lucy Fisher, and Britain editor of The New Statesman, Anoush Chikeli. Thank you all very much for coming along to make sense of everything. And if we could begin with Rishi Sunak and the Tories, I just want an assessment from each of you about how fragile he is as the recess approaches. Fraser, could he be gone by the time of the election?
I very much doubt it, because even the Conservatives would think at this point of the year for emphasis use the phrase Conservative with complete cycle drama, chaos, etc. bedlam. I think what we see now is Number 10 almost encouraging the stories of, say, Penny Wharton's 100 million campaign, so the party can do a thought experiment. Okay, how would that work? How do we spend this to make sure that we then stop the arguments? If there is huge opposition and salving and a leader of perspiration of inspiration. But is there a plausible alternative who is likely to get a better result for them? They made that mistake with Boris Johnson's administration, demonstrated that no matter how bad things are, they can always get a lot worse. I think that is
Lucy and Anoush nodding to that. Is that broadly your view?
Well, it is, but the only caveat I'd make is that I have spoken to MPs from the One Nation wing of the party, people I normally call sensible, quite cautious parliamentarians, who in the past week, 2 weeks, have started to say to me, gosh, I have found myself thinking, shall we have another roll of the dice? You know, I thought that there was a floor on the Tory vote of how low it could go. I'm now worried that that's not the case. Could this election be an extinction level event? Lots of people pointing to the example of the Canadian Conservatives who essentially sort of disappeared in the space of one electoral cycle. So it does feel to me there has been a particular moment of panic and despair. I do agree with Fraser ultimately that I don't think Sunak will be replaced, but May the 2nd, the local elections will be a moment of danger for Sunak. If there is electoral rout, if he perhaps lost both Tees Valley, Ben Houchin at Booster Boy, Levelling Up, and Andy Street in West Midlands also lost, along with huge loss of councillors, I think we could see this all re-erupt once again, this conversation.
Okay, so none of you are certain that you think it's more likely than not that he will lead the Tories to the election. Nonetheless, you mentioned there Canada-style wipeout of the 1990s and so on. So let's explore how we have got to this position. What's interesting, Anoush, when I used to study Shakespeare tragedies, we always used to have this discussion. Was it about character, the character of Hamlet, that brought about what followed, or the circumstances and context that Shakespeare provided? Sunak.
Yeah, is he a man more sinned against than sinned?
Is it about the poll tax, for example? Was he in too weak a position? He had to bring back Suella Braverman to win that sort of embryonic leadership contest. He had cause to be worried about the followers of Boris Johnson, so he couldn't challenge him internally about issues of integrity. Or has he been himself too weak? What's your assessment? Why he is?
Well, when he became leader, he used the phrase put in as leader. Now, the first election, he lost to Liz Truss, so he had to build a coalition. That's why you had the Andrew Mitchells and Suella Braverman and all the wings of the party that thought might bring him trouble. Now, he did. Only last October, the party conference, he was talking about defining himself against the 30-year failed consensus. Now, that was quite a radical move. He was basically saying, look, David Cameron and of the piece with Blair and Brown, HS2, these are the old policies and we're turning the page. That was quite plausible and consistent with him saying, look, this would be a Tory term and the first term of the regime of Sunak government. But then, obviously, any claim to like genuine competent attorney was collapsed because you have brought with you the book written by the former leader, and Cameron is there, and that was at the moment where he also thought, I'm not going to be able to keep this Boris coalition together. This 2019 Brexity kind of red wall Tories out, it isn't going to work. I am now finding a defensive position where I need to worry about the Dems. In that case, I need David Cameron back to try to keep the Lib Dem voters and MPs off my back. So when Cameron came back, that was the point that I believe that the two distinctive Smith project collapsed, and the party was de facto shooting for where it is now, usually like 2
So let's look at the current strategy now. Leadership is really difficult. Let's acknowledge that it is erupting with dilemmas at every level. But as a communicator, every time I see or hear Rishi Sunak, he says we're sticking with the plan. And I follow his every speech. I'm not entirely sure even what the plan is, yet I'm sticking with the plan. What is the plan? Inflation down, I suppose, sort of focusing on the economy, but is it about the votes? What is this plan? And where was the big speech presenting a plan before you hail the plan every soundbite? And it seems to me that sort of basic stuff of communication and language is part of the current problem. What do you think?
I actually take a different view. I think one area where Sunak and the Conservatives, traditionally have always been strong is in message discipline. I think there's many voters out there who could probably recite to you the Tory lines to take around sticking to the plan, Labour will be back to square one. And I think if you try and define what Keir Starmer's vision is for the country, it feels a lot more nebulous. And I think he has some way to go yet to try and define that with much more clarity and definition. I do think you're right, Steve. What is this plan is the big question mark. We initially thought that Sunak was going to try and fight the election on immigration and the economy. The Rwanda bill being delayed this week won't pass into law until after Easter. The idea of enough people being transported to the East African nation for this to work as a deterrent before the German election, to me, seems pretty much for the best. I think with the economy, Sunak could be in a much better position come the autumn. And I just think there could be the seeds of these green shoots, people beginning to feel more optimistic about the economy in a few months' time. And of course, £20 billion double cut to national insurance that were unveiled in the autumn statement and in the March 6th budget will really have filtered through. The Tories are talking up worth £900 a year for workers. So I'm not saying it's going to be successful, but you can see how he could be in a better position come October than he is now in Donald Trump.
In exploring finding the dynamics of him and other dynamics, we all know it's almost that number 10 and many Tory MPs are terrified when they pick up the opinion polls, not only seeing how far behind they are, but before the UK breathing down their necks. So this presents a wider strategic question. Is there a way he can frame a set of policies that appeal to the so-called blue wall who might vote with them, and that addresses the threat posed by reform, or does he have to choose? And in which case, where do you think he's going to go?
Well, this is his whole dilemma, and this is the way that he's being torn into different directions by his own party, by the One Nation group of MPs, which do have a lot of cabinet ministers around the cabinet table with Sunak in his ear, but then you also have the right-wingers, particularly with the defection of Lee Anderson to Reform UK, many of whom are 2019 MPs who won those seats in the Red Wall and fear they're going to lose them, pulling him in different directions. But first towards a more liberal, perhaps more Cameroon set of policies where perhaps the nastiness of some of the language about asylum seekers and immigration is a bit more muted, and then those on the other side who want him to roll on more of those issues as well as the kind of cultural talking points. So I don't think he can do both, and I think he's demonstrating his weakness in trying to appeal to both sides. But that's the big problem of declaration.
There's a how to them is defective and so on. This isn't like that, obviously, but could it be historically significant? So previous Labour leaders went on to lose elections by the third conversation like this. You know, before the government was worried about split miles behind the polls. And yet the Labour leadership are so used to losing elections, there is still a nervousness, quite a lot of stressful tension at the top of Labour, isn't there?
Well, certainly, and I think there are critics internally within Labour and from without who think that the Labour proposition is too cautious to inspire the electorate and get some of those don't knows to switch from the Conservatives to Labour. I think, you know, Keir Starmer is talking very pointedly about a decade of national renewal under Labour, making this argument already that it would take 2 terms to really try and turn things around. We heard this week with Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, giving the Mays Lecture, this prestigious economic lecture that's been going on since the late 1970s, where senior politicians and economists set out their vision. And again, she's very, very cautious, talking about the importance of stability, building on the strength of institutions. And I just wonder if they will need to show a bit more ankle. They've got eye-catching policies on planning, on labour market reforms, but after throwing back so heavily on their green prosperity plan, scaling it back from 28 billion a year to just under 5 billion, I do wonder if we're going to see a similar dilution of this deal for working people now that we're beginning to see business lobbying groups come out to raise concerns about some of the rights they want to hand workers. Again, this idea of Keir Starmer being a flip-flopper, which is a key attack line that the Tories use against him, I think is a little bit at risk if we see some of the other policy areas that are left scaled down further.
Anush, the Rachel Reeves lecture was fascinating and in a way emblematic of the moment, because it was a really radical analysis of what has gone wrong and how we have got to here, going back to the 80s, New Labour era, Osborne austerity period, with a sort of, and indeed Brexit actually, which she forensically criticised. And then she would argue, and then came up with a radical prospectus about growth and productivity and the role of an active state. But then you look back, and the fiscal rules are going to be tough. And the spending so far is the spending projections of the current government, which are going to be tight, in many cases real terms cuts. Now, how do you go into that election explaining that contrast between radical analysis and some cases cautious prescription?
Yeah, you're right, there's a huge tension there. I mean, Rachel Reeves has visited Washington, she's taken on some of the
filmmaker admits, and sometimes you can make a mistake. That's happened to Elvis. Mikhail Piotrowski, director of the Hermitage Museum in Petersburg, gives me a potted history lesson, telling me about Russian emperors who ruled long but well. He cites the example of Catherine the Great. And anyway, what can you do if all Russians love Putin and want him to stay in power? Well, that's what Margarita Simonyan, editor-in-chief of state broadcaster RT, writes. She tells me everyone supports Putin. I don't know anyone who doesn't. Ivan doesn't. I meet Ivan at the polling station on the third and final day of Russia's election. He's taking part in a silent protest against the system, against the direction in which President Putin is leading his country, and against the war in Ukraine. Opposition figures in exile had called on Russian voters to flood polling stations at midday to either vote against Putin or spoil their ballots. They knew that in an election tightly controlled by the Kremlin, such a protest wouldn't change the inevitable outcome of Putin's landslide, but they are. Long queues of disaffected citizens would at least undermine the official narrative, according to which Mr. Putin enjoys the overwhelming support of his people. Just before noon, the queue forms outside the polling station. Suddenly, several dozen Muslims are lining up by the entrance. Similar midday queues are reported at polling stations across the country. I've never seen crowds like these in Russia on election day. It takes some courage to come out and stand here. The Moscow prosecutor's office had issued a warning that large numbers of voters at polling stations at noon would constitute unauthorized mass gatherings and be considered illegal. I'm happy, Ivan tells are a lot of normal people who don't support the war and other crimes. It's important for me to see the other faces here, to see that I'm not alone in my political views. From the polling station, I
So many people refuse to say the real thing. They just say it's my husband, in fact, about this, the Central Party of the job. And one of the best ways to get people to actually see it as real is to withhold it. So if you're a woman and you're expected to constantly make people feel, at ease around you, or you're expected to be terribly good at conversation, stop doing it. Suddenly, people are very uncomfortable because you're withholding that emotional labor that they've actually come to rely on, but they refuse to think is real or even valuable.
Yes, it's such a good example. I mean, it's also a good example of work. When you found emotional labour maybe certain roles, and those roles are feminised, for instance, waitressing as opposed to waitering, whereas you weren't polite when you are taking somebody's food. You demonised in common. So you're right that the way to perhaps show something like this is to withdraw it. But just to go back to the difference between emotional labour or how we're talking about emotional labour and women's intuition, how do you explain those two in relation to each other?
I mean, emotional labour is obviously work with emotions. A person will be on themselves, have an effect on the emotions of the people around them, so it's far as you think accurately or it's questioning, that you will do to make other people feel good inside, regardless of whether you're feeling good inside. It's an expectation that we have long faced on women, and we have rendered typical values like that as one of the most essential forms of work. Society is the work that keeps families, communities, economies going. But what's the difference between emotional labour and women's intuition? There are so many ways in which we refuse to name emotional labour as well, but in our society, we talk about basically versions of emotional labour. Women's intuition is one version of emotional labour.
It's a version of it.
Absolutely, it's one of the ways in which we've internalized and actually fixed in place a set of skills and duties and activities that are not just offloaded onto women, but offloaded onto marginalized communities. So it's something that, for example, black people might feel like they have to do towards white people. It's definitely something that gets racialized.
In some of your videos where you've been posting on this on social media, in fact there were, I understand, black people saying this is like racial code. This is to that point.
Absolutely. I think, black scholars have done an amazing job, especially across the 20th century, to really talk about the, double bind that they find themselves in, the white mask that black people often, whether in the UK, in Europe, or in America, which is where I'm based, forced into wearing in the white-dominated society. And I think as women, we can relate to existential states that we're forced into. And actually, in my video, you pointed out a lot of people comment suddenly these big aha moments. One person commented this idea that someone looks at him, a woman looks at him, not like a horse, but a mouse. This you're being brought up in let's say a family where you have a father or husband with a very bad temper, but people around that husband very sadly are going to be taught to walk on eggshells, are going to be taught to watch that person, very careful about what they say or do, and very good at protecting intuition. It's going to be doing that defensive emotional labor.
Yes, and I mean there will be those perhaps, because that's why I asked you to explain about the relationship between emotional labour and female intuition, because I don't women's intuition. There will be those women who believe though, sort of separating that as women, they do have some intuition. There is a knowing or something, whether it's related to child rearing through to just human interaction and being better at perhaps some of that. Are you saying that is there, but it's the reason that it's there? Or are you saying that the reason it's there is because of how we've been or are you saying it's not necessarily there?
I'm definitely saying it's there. It's something we've been trained in being very good at. It's something that in fact we don't do from a young age we're police. If we're not smiling on the street, we will be told to smile. If we are not smiling at work, we will be told we're abrasive. We will not be given those opportunities that our fellow men will.
So what should it be called if it's not called women's intuition? Should it be called forced niceness onto women? Or forced capacity?
I wrote a book called Emotional Labour, so I would argue it needs to be called emotional labour.
Yeah, but I suppose that takes it. Yes, I suppose in lots of things maybe in some people's minds. But yes, you would argue that, and rightly so, I'm sure. What just with a tiny bit of time we've got left together, I think this is absolutely fascinating. We've just had, for instance, a message from a nurse saying, I'm a nurse, emotional labour is a huge thing, invisible but felt by both nurses, patients and colleagues. It would become visible if we withdrew our emotional efforts, but it's a compulsory part of the role, so this will happen to remain in childcare. So another example away from the serving of food through to the care of patients. So to your point, if it's withdrawn, it's noticed. What are you advising, if you are, women in particular to do when it comes to, when they recognise this, when it comes to beyond recognising it, what to do about how to navigate that?
I think fundamentally, whether you call it emotional labour or whether you call it women's intuition, it is a superpower that clearly is available to all genders, but women are just better at this, for now. I think that when aware with it, just like what you're doing, we can choose whether or not we want to be doing it. We can become aware of the degree to which we do it. We can become aware of the degree to which it's expected of us in ways that are not necessarily always fair. I think it's really important when we're having these conversations to also remember that it's a valuable set of traits, it's a valuable skill set. I'm not saying that all girls in this label are women's intuition, right? It's just a question of actually rendering and making it visible, making it valued, and ideally sharing it across, people, groups. So that honestly, what about men having feelings? That would be great. It would be wonderful, to have men do it, thinking about how they're being perceived and what other people are feeling.
Journalist and author Rose Hampton. Finally, girls don't play guitars. That's what John Lennon said to four working class girls from 1960 Liverpool, who went on to form one of the first all-female rock and roll bands in the world. The Liverbirds proved John Lennon wrong by touring stadiums across Europe, playing with Chuck Berry, the Pink, the Rolling Stones, and winning over tough crowds at Hamburg's legendary Star Club, all in the space of just 5 years. But unlike them, they'll come apart. The same length of career and riches didn't follow. Emma spoke to two surviving members of the band about their new book, The Liverbirds. But first, let's take a listen to this.
Well, there's a fool around that you think he's thinking. Peanut butter. Yeah, it tastes real good, but it's so wild. Peanut butter. Yeah, all my friends tell me that they think it's the most. Peanut butter. Yeah, I'll eat in the morning when they spit on soap. Peanut butter. Yeah, I like peanut butter. You like peanut butter. Well, we like peanut butter too. Yeah, I went to a party and what did they do? Peanut butter. Yeah, it tasted real good, but
That's the Liverbirds and their signature cover of the song Peanut Butter. Bass player Mary McGlory and drummer Sylvia Saunders joined Emma in the studio, and Sylvia began by giving her reaction to hearing their music again.
It's fantastic film back there, but we're like 16-year-olds again. What memories come to mind for you, Mary?
For me, listening to Peanut Butter, well, going to Hamburg, of course, on the train, practicing songs, getting to Hamburg and going on this fantastic stage, and people just went crazy. We turned around and started rattling our behind to the top of the show and played ticket to the Beatles, Max Show, and that was our show, and people started throwing money on stage and were really big, real mad.
I wonder if I just take you back a tiny bit, so with how you actually got together as a band.
And so first of all, Mary, she had photographs taken because they were going to go to form a group, and then we saw an advert in the paper, which was the Mercy Group then, and these four girls were going to start a group, and Valerie and I had the idea also, because Valerie was lead guitarist, but then I couldn't play the guitar because my fingers were too small for the frets, so I said, I'll get a kit of drums. And then we went to Mary's house and we said, have you got a band? Is everything going all right? And she said, no, we stopped, we couldn't play. And Valerie said, well, don't worry, you've got the instruments, I'll teach you. And that's how we've come together.
That's amazing. And the name? Who named you?
Well, as matter of fact, it was my cousin who was in the group at first, but she couldn't play neither. So So she said before she left, she had a good idea for this name Liverbirds, because up to then, nobody had thought of using this word referring to females from Liverpool, and that's how we got the name.
Yes, synonymous with Liverpool. And taking us back to that time, you mentioned the Beatles, but it was a really important time, wasn't it, culturally, music-wise, but mainly men.
It was all men. When we were facing the Beatles on stage, we just thought, well, why the hell aren't women doing this as well? And that gave us the idea, let's do that. But like Sylvia said, my first group, my cousins, couldn't play.
I love that you couldn't play, but you still formed a band.
Yeah, even that's ambitious. I mean, I played the instruments as well. But when we got to the shop, they said to me, what instrument are you going to play? And I said, well, I want to play bass like Paul McCartney. So that's how I got a bass.
And this quote from John Lennon about girls not playing guitars, how did that come about, or who did he say it to?
He said it to all of us. The four of us were in the cabin, and Bob Waller, the DJ, said, would you like to come and meet the boys who had just come off stage in the restroom in their oldies, getting themselves dried with a big towel. And Bob Waller said to Paul McCartney and John Lennon, this is the Liverbirds. They're going to be the first all-female band. And Paul McCartney said, oh, what a great idea. And John Lennon just looked at us and said, girls don't play guitars. What did you say to that? Well, we said we'll show him. We're going to show him. Girls can play guitars and drums, of course.
Yes.
Because I couldn't play the drums at all either.
And did you say that to him at that time, or was that one of those moments where you think of the response later, you know, the brilliant thing to say?
As we sort of come out the dressing room, we both look at the house. Four of us sort of near and neighbour looked at each other and turned around and said, we'll show it, won't we?
And we did. Yes, and I mean, going to Hamburg, this whole journey, how did that come about?
We heard about a man coming from Hamburg to do auditions for the Star Club. It was Bill Harry from the Mercedes who told us to go to these auditions. We auditioned, and Henry Henwood, the man, said right away, oh, we definitely have to have you in Hamburg.
And how did you find it? What was the experience like, Sylvia?
It was fantastic, but of course we couldn't go right away because I was only 17. So we had to get special permission from Bow Street Magistrates Court for me to go.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I got the permission, and when we actually arrived at the Star Club, it was absolutely, couldn't believe it. You know, we saw the street with all lights, all sex, and, you know, we just were in amazement. And of course, Mary was going to be a nun, don't forget.
Wow. The bass playing nun, taking Hamburg by storm.
There's still time.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that the latter aspiration?
Yeah, I can give up, yes.
Just been a bit distracted along the way.
Yeah.
But it went well in Hamburg. I mean, you guys are still teaching, right? You have a real following.
Yes, every time I go over to Hamburg, because of course Mary, she married me a German, who was lovely, thank Gospel, who wrote, yes sir, I can boogie. Yeah, and you know, she is still there, living there 60 years. And I go over, and sometimes we go to a show to see something. People come over to us and say, oh, the Liverbirds talking. And we're signing autographs.
That's amazing. That is amazing. And I was looking back at a video of you performing for Kino Bunter, and it's really striking. You know, people may have heard your music, but maybe not everybody was, or can necessarily think about what you looked like and how you dressed and how you presented yourself. And you didn't trade on your sexuality. You know, you look in some ways like the boys, or they look like you, whichever way around. But was that a very deliberate choice? Did you talk about that?
Yeah, it was at the time. We didn't want to be going on stage in silly dresses or things like that. And Astrid Kidd, who was a good friend of the Beatles, who was engaged to the one that died in Hamburg, she helped us at the idea of having these black trousers and like pretty flowers on. So
A tiny bit of frill, but not too much. Not sort of frill.
And hardly any makeup.
Yes, and then it's very cool things to look back on, I have to say. How do you feel about it now? Like that whole look and the way you came across?
Well, as a matter of fact, it's very popular at the moment. When you walk into the shops, you see all these pretty blouses.
Yeah.
All the pretty blouses are coming back, and also the trousers with the little slit at the front.
Yes.
And what we used to call them, they call them boot bootleg
Yes.
trousers now, don't
They are. I'm wearing a little bit. No, but yeah, you're right. They're back.
Yeah, yeah.
And was it for you? I mean, how do you think the experience? Now you still see the Rolling Stones on tour, for instance, right? You know, and I wonder how that feels to you, having come up at a similar time.
Well, as a matter of fact, we all started off again 5 years ago. We got an offer for a musical about us, and that really took off. Four girls don't play guitars at the Royal Court, and now we've just recorded a new album with the two girls who play Calvin Pan in the musical, and of course the book.
Yes,
Charles
which is what we're talking about, and many stories in there. But I suppose it's also just that what the lives were like for you being in the first situation of a female rock band here, and how it was for the men as well. It is different, isn't it?
Well, I mean, we mixed with them, you know, I mean, we were looked upon as part of the gang, and even the females who were like the groupies in them days, they accepted us.
Yeah, you know, they used to come to us and say to help them, you know, because they used to be in the beer shop where the Beatles used to go. Everybody used to sort of congregate into this beer shop, and they'd ask our advice of, well, could you tell us what do we say to the boys? Because of course they were trying to speak English, you know. Yes. And your groupies, how were they? Fantastic.
Our husbands always said they were our first groupies.
Yeah, and yeah. I feel there was a lot more that was about to be said here.
Yeah, that's true.
Read the book.
Mary McGlory and Sylvia Saunders from the band The Light Bird Fair. That's it from me on this edition of Weekend Women's Hour. Thank you so much for your company. Join Nuna McGovern on Monday where she'll be speaking to Academy Awards.
Smell, yes, the smoke, because the constable was burning all night. This was one of the most famous concert venues in Russia, but yesterday it became a bloodbath where the government went on the rampage, killing dozens of people and leaving Russia in shock. Now, throughout the morning, Russians have been coming here, bringing flowers, laying flowers in a native shrine, and trying to comprehend what's actually happening. And among the people here are Russians who saw the news on television and felt they had to come. There are people who had friends here yesterday, and there are also people who were here themselves during the shooting. I spoke to one woman who recounted her nightmare, the nightmare she went through. She told me that she managed to get out, and the first thing she did when she got home was to hug her children tight.
Mrs. Steve Rosenberg reporting. Well, Margarita and Anastasia were in the audience at Crocus Hall, City Hall last night, and both survived. They returned home today, but their plan was outside the venue, and this was how they described themselves.
We heard gunshots. The gunshots just went on and on. Then we went down to some kind of ground floor, a dark room, and I saw only the word exit shining in the darkness. And we just didn't know whether to run or not. Who was there in the dark? What's out there in the dark? First people ran, the door opened, and I saw it then to the street. My husband grabbed me, and we got outside. The others who were following us came to a lower floor instead. We were very distressed yesterday, and of course it's very hard. Today I express my condolences to everyone. It is a misfortune, a grief. They were just walking and shooting as they went along. There were 5 or 6 of them. They were just walking and shooting like this. They did not shoot upwards. They did not scream. They did not say, everyone lay down, we will kill you. They were just walking and gunning down everyone methodically in silence. The sound was echoing, and we couldn't understand what was where. It's unbelievable. You understand only now how lucky, really lucky we were.
This is Margarita and Anastasia in Crocus Concert Hall. This afternoon, the Russian President Vladimir Putin finally changed the televised address, declaring tomorrow a national day of mourning. Despite the Islamic State group admitting responsibility for the attack outside Moscow, Vladimir Putin seemed to do what would be a break. Suspect was by Russian security services today, but be captured for trying to Ukraine.
All those who were shooting and killing people were found and detained. they tried to hide and were moving towards Ukraine. On the Ukrainian side, a window to cross the border had been opened.
Sarah Baker is our Eastern Europe correspondent and former Moscow correspondent. She's currently in Kiev and joins us online now. Sarah, what have Ukrainian officials been saying about the
Well, the accusations from Russia started pretty quickly after the news of this terrorist in Moscow started coming in. You know, officials of all sorts started to point the finger towards Kyiv. Russia and Ukraine were at war, of course, and here in Ukraine there was always that fear from the very beginning that they were going to be blamed. And in response to those accusations,
Ukraine? Who's on the line now? Good afternoon.
Hello there.
The evidence so far does seem to point to the Islamic State group, as do the arrests that have been made. Is that a reasonable working assumption?
It is, I mean, actually, if we look at the last few years, the most serious terrorist threats that Russia has faced have exactly come from Islamic State, but specifically from Islamic State originating in Central Asia, rather than in sort of Chechnya and the rest of the North Caucasus to the south of Russia. So this absolutely fits into a pattern, and also it's, to be honest, their style of terrorist attack.
And clearly the security services in Russia have been very much focused on internal political opposition after the death of Alexei Navalny. Does it seem to you that they in the Kremlin took their eye off pointedly against the Islamic State group?
I think so. Look, one has to recognise that however powerful sometimes terrorist attacks are going to be through. That's unfortunately predictable. But the point is, from the Russians' point of view, they've actually found themselves increasingly having a problem with Central Asian terrorism because they're used to terrorism from the North Caucasus. They have highly trained outfits, they have networks of informants and so forth. It's been a lot harder for them to actually get their head around how to deal with the Central Asians. To a large extent, they've actually had to rely on reports coming actually from the Central Asian countries, which are often very dubious and very much politicized. So look, they've been aware that this is a problem, but as you say, with the emphasis on policing political dissent at home and Ukrainians abroad, it hasn't been a priority.
Do you think Vladimir Putin's own authority is weakened by this attack?
I suspect it is. Historically, after all, he built his legitimacy on, shall we say, two faces. One was the Putin who was the tough defender of the motherland, and the other one who was the Putin who was bringing improved quality of life to ordinary Russians. Now we're increasingly seeing that second legitimated strand effectively no longer applies to type of war and sanctions. So he's having to double down on his role as a tough defender. And so whenever something like this happens, it's all very well seen going on television after the event and saying we will find out everyone who's responsible and deliver retribution. But that's not really what people want. People want this not to happen in the first place. So he is in some ways failing to provide on the social contract he's offering Russians.
And what impact do you think this will have on the public in Russia as well as on the war in Ukraine?
Well, on the war in Ukraine, firstly, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, yes, there is disparity somehow in Ukraine were involved. It's quite interesting that if you look at the war kind of, should I say, professional and official outputs, they're not really making a huge emphasis on this. So it may be used as an excuse for why Russia was beleaguered, but I don't think it's going to have much impact on the war itself. In terms of the Russian public, I think that it absolutely speaks to an insecurity that so many Russians are feeling, especially now that also they're facing the threat of Ukrainian drones. And that sense of Putin as the man who at least could provide some sort of protection from a dangerous world, as that begins to erode, people are going to look for alternative answers. So little bit by little bit, it is part of the erosion of Putin's legitimacy.
Do you think we will be hearing more from the Islamic State group?
Well, look, I mean, obviously they are capitalizing on this. They're beginning to release information about the fighters and so forth. But, from their point of view, terrorism is not just about killing people, it is about an information operation. So they're going to milk this for its worth. In terms of launching further attacks, what we've seen in the past, when they have, for example, there's a bombing in the metro, which was carried out by Islamic State Khorasan, it tends to be that they don't have the resources to launch multiple attacks in succession. So although there may be some smaller scale incidents, I don't think we're going to see anything at this scale.
Professor Art Cavaliati, thank you. After weeks of increasingly outlandish speculation concerning
They completely lost sight very early of the fact that I'm a mum, I'm a human being, but it's in their best interest early doors to sort of dehumanise me. And on a much larger scale, this is what we're seeing with Catherine. People forgot weeks ago that she is a real person with little children.
Online today are offering their apologies to the Duchess and saying sorry for the stories that they've put up on. You've got apologies. Is that the only thing to say?
I would say there have probably been about 60 women all told. I mean, I know that most of them are, that's the most extraordinary thing, but there are about 60 of them who kind of come in and out. 5 that are particularly sort of committed and vicious. And out of those, I've had 3 apologies total, one of whom I met. Yes, it does make you feel slightly better if just one person looks at you and acknowledges the absolute pain they have caused you and your children and your family and your friends. But for the most part, it will always be the case that the majority of trolls will stick to their guns, because unfortunately, admitting that they're trolls, admitting that they don't really have a righteous campaign, that really they're just doing it because it's fun. It's fun to gossip about someone, it's fun to pick on somebody. For them to say sorry and for them to admit their wrongdoing, unfortunately, makes them have to admit very painful things about their own character and their own place they're at in life. And that's very hard for people to do.
And that was Sally's views on the lasting impact of being trolled by strangers online. And you can watch a BBC News special programme about how the Princess of Wales revealed her cancer diagnosis in a video message to the nation. Kate's cancer diagnosis is on the BBC iPlayer. British Film Institute's National Festival of International Gay Cinema featured the European premiere of Laurence Montero. It's a documentary about Lil Nas X, one of America's most acclaimed and at times controversial rappers. BBC's Vincent Dowd met the men who made the film.
The former Montero Hill, born in Georgia, has become a star worldwide as rapper and songwriter Lil Nas X. He has millions of followers online. He came out as gay when he was 20. The film the BFI had premiered in London is in part a record of Lil Nas X's huge energy on stage, but its makers say it's much else besides.
My name is Carlos Lopez Estrada. I am one of the 2 directors of Lil Nas X, Long Live Montero. We knew that we were going to capture a coming of age of sorts, so we were just there to see how an artist goes from being sort of like an intimate bedroom artist to being this sort of like very, very public performer. That's the intention of the doc, to capture that magic, that moment.
Some people think my music is dope. Some people see me as like the satanic devil. When I was a kid, my sexuality was like the elephant in the room. I started getting like bad like anxiety attacks. Coming out was very important to progress.
The co-director is Zach Manuel. He shot some of the extravagantly produced concerts, as much theatre as music events.
I think his audience is anyone who struggled with their identity or had struggles with expressing themselves as honestly or as truthfully as they want to. His audience is Black queerness in the American South. It gives people kind of someone to look to say, my story matters, this is my truth as well.
The film talks to those fans.
Lil Nas X made me realize that in order to love myself, I have to love the parts of myself that I fear.
Videos viewed online by the million.
I beg you all to stop this unnecessary killing of innocent people.
Grateful that anniversary of his son's death, and he described the impact it continues to have on him.
I feel very bad. I just feel such a difficult situation that for the rest of my life I have to live with it, you know, and then just bear the cross and then die with it.
And that was
And that, for now, unless we have a guest, is all from us here at Saturday PM. Studio direction today was by Adrian Bargava, and our producers were Isabel Goff and Josh Simpson. Our editor today was Caroline Taylor. Caroline Wyatt, our specialist list. Thank you, Caroline. Caroline Wyatt.
How do you feel being called a scab? I don't think we know scab.
The miners' strike, 40 years on.
They create lost hostility. I think some of that still runs through till today. I'm Mark, and when I was 10, my dad was a starting miner. I'll be taking a personal look at Britain's biggest ever industrial disputes and trying to make sense of the deeper held views on all sides. That's the way the community is put together, and then they were not going to listen to again.
And it can't be concrete.
Strike Boy, on Radio 4, and available now on BBC Sounds.
This is BBC Radio 4, where now Greg Foot investigates the facts behind another product suggested by listeners. This is Sliced Bread.
Hello, I'm Greg Foot, and welcome to the show that investigates the wonder product promising to make you happier, healthier, or greener. This week's suggestion comes in from Food Sellers.
Hi Greg, there's a big debate in my family about dishwashers. Is using a dishwasher more efficient and better for the environment than washing up by hand?
Okay, thank you very much for those. To find out, I'm going to chat to the expert on this, someone who has been investigating this latent question for many decades. In fact, he's the senior professor for household technology and process engineering at the University of Bonn in Germany, Professor Renda Stafford. Hi there, Renda.
Hi, Roy. Nice to meet you.
You too. Thanks so much for jumping on and chatting to me.
You're welcome.
I feel like everyone has their own particular method for hand washing the dishes or for stacking the dishwasher, and of course their method is always the right method. Right? I know you bring a study where you invited 150 people to Milton Keynes to see how they washed up a pile of dishes by hand,
Yes.
and how they stacked them into a dishwasher. So can you tell me what you did and what you saw?
Yeah, so I had the same opinion as you, that everybody does it as I was doing the dishes. So I was also very, very much surprised when we saw that everybody does it different, actually. And they all had to do the same job. They had to wash up a pile of dishes which were soiled.
What had you soiled them with?
Minced meat, spinach, we have egg yolk on it, we have oat flakes on it, and we measured time was 49 liters of water by hand washing, and for the same amount of dishes to be cleaned in a dishwasher, the dishwasher used 13 liters, 1-3. So it's about 1/4 of that, more than a factor of 3. Yes.
Yeah.
And now, today, the dishwashers are even more effective. So the latest number I have from the average of the British households, it's 10.9 liters. So it's even again 2 liters less.
That's the water use. What about the energy use? How does that compare hand washing versus machine washing in a dishwasher?
When we look for hand washing, the average consumer used 1.7 kilowatt hours of energy, while the dishwasher used 1.3 kilowatt hours of energy. So the difference is not as big as for the water, but there is still some relevant difference.
There's things that we should note in that way. Firstly, those things are hand use. So 1.3 kilowatt hours of energy in the dishwasher is the average across UK homes at that time. UK rate is 1.2 now. That's the average, so the UK home use less energy. Okay, good. Secondly, the energy figures, the dishwasher will be using electricity to heat up the water, whereas the hand washing will likely be using hot water heated by a gas boiler. That means the financial cost is going to differ from the energy cost.
Yes.
And third and final, that is the energy footprint per use. So we need to factor in the footprint of making the dishwasher in the first place as well, right?
So this is some environmental cost, but in producing the dishwasher and running the dishwasher, more than 80% of the total energy is really coming from running the dishwasher. The construction or the building of the dishwasher, all the materials,
I bet it's only less than 20% of the total environmental burden and greenhouse gas emissions, and it is most important when running a dishwasher to look how it is used.
What about when you do the full life cycle calculations for hand washing versus a dishwasher? What do you get?
Yeah, so when comparing use of a dishwasher over its lifetime of 10 to 30 years, comparing that with manual washing, it turns out that the environmental effects, especially regarding greenhouse gas emissions, are lower when using the dishwasher compared when doing the
Just the bowl, but from that perspective, probably visually, I would think I'd be using quite a lot of water. And subconsciously, if that's when you put it in the dishwasher, you can't feel that water being used. I would feel like I was using more water, even though perhaps, as I said, it's not the case.
And one of your questions was about whether you should pre-rinse the dishes before putting them in the dishwasher. Do you currently?
I absolutely do not. And this is where the debate sparks my battle. There is serious words about pre-registering and pre-string bowls.
So, Raven says, don't pre-rinse.
Excellent.
Pre-rinsing dishes in running water, which use way more water than the pre-rinse cycle in the dishwasher, essentially 100 litres rather than 5.
Wow, that's extremely different.
I think those stats would work. Full-size dishwasher, stacked to the brim with your dishes, and pre-rinsing all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's enough about it. Saying that though, I have a dishwasher, and I find that if I don't pre-rinse some items, say a bowl that has porridge in it,
Yeah.
then that can come out with food still on it.
Yes. So I guess then you've got the extra layer of what the impact of then retrospectively.
But I think the key there is that I probably scrape off any porridge bits, or indeed pre-soaked it in the way that John suggested with the hand washing as well. Very minimal.
Yeah, that sounds, I think, very sensible, doesn't it? Get a bowl, half full, soak, as you say, soil, bowls, and then go to the dishwasher all the way.
Or perhaps I stacked the dishwasher badly, when I'm never going to admit to that.
It's a skill.
We found a study in 6 said that it's because energy and water consumption is too high. Were they right? In a word, no. Energy consumption is hugely different. The average dishwasher uses average dishwasher, which is by hand. A dishwasher does come out on top, 1.2 kilowatts of energy versus 1.7 hand washing, and even if you factor in the energy required to make the dishwasher, over its lifetime, the greenhouse gas emissions of using the dishwasher still come out lower than the average energy used for hand washing.
I think probably a win for the dishwasher rather than.
Yeah, and when you look at water use, there's a much bigger difference. A big hand washing experiment saw that the average UK hand washer uses around 50 litres of water, whereas the average dishwasher wash in the UK now uses around 11 litres of water.
It's different.
I mean, if you're a pro, if you follow all of Raven's top tips for hand washing, then those figures are going to come down. I've got a slimline dishwasher in my kitchen with tests have shown that they use roughly the same amount of energy, but they have fewer dishes. So therefore, they are going to be slightly less eco-friendly.
Yeah, but actually you can full size, fit more in, kitchen allowed.
Exactly right.
We've already got a dishwasher, but it's probably getting towards the end of its life now. Would you say it's worth spending more on a more efficient dishwasher?
So I didn't discuss that with the prof, but Which have done lots of helpful analysis on this, and it doesn't look like spending more on a dishwasher guarantees a better clean. So some of their best cheaper dishwasher recommendations cost less than £300. Beyond that, you essentially pay for features: an anti-flood sensor, an auto door open feature that pops the door open so your dishes can dry, Bluetooth or smart capabilities, so you can sit on the sofa and operate it with your phone or whatever.
There you go, don't need to spend more on that then.
And they found that if you run the Eco program, that can save you around £45 a year in energy costs, which is several £100 over the dishwasher's lifetime. So, does that settle the debate, the family feud?
Yes, absolutely. I'm thrilled with the answer. At the time I wasn't sure which way it was going, but good to know that meeting in the middle is
them is soaking plates or bowls with food on beforehand and then loading them well. I talked to my colleagues about this. They were saying they use their dogs to do the first rinse.
I'm holding my head in shock. I don't even know where to start with that. An angle I never thought to look into. Alright, there's a lot to follow up. Well, thanks, Steve. That was a pleasure. Really appreciate it.
Great, cheers, bye.
Bye. And is it for me this time? Next time, brewing up something a little different. We've had loads of requests in for me to investigate whether mushroom coffee and other mushroom products can be linked with your immunity to your mental powers or have anti-inflammatory effects. And we're not talking about pesto or tomato or button mushrooms here. We're looking into products made of the likes of cordyceps or reishi or lion's mane mushrooms. Is this fungi-fueled trend all it's claimed to be? Finding out here. Sliced Bread was presented by Greg Cook. The producer was Simon Holden. On BBC Radio 4, do you write rebel people at the time? Website music is all over. Owes over 600 pieces in a short lifetime. They can actually write. It's already okay. I'm Greg Jenner, and together with the comedian David O'Doherty, historian Dr. Hannah Templeton, and the BBC concert orchestra, I am digging deep into the life of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. That's just how I'm beginning like Amadeus. We're the comedy podcast that takes history seriously. Called You're Dead to Me, this is our Mozart special. It's on Radio 4, BBC Sounds. Next Saturday morning at 10. Now, a Radio 4 the shipping forecast issued by the Met Office on behalf of the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency at 1725 on Saturday the 23rd of March. There are warnings of gales in Viking, Norfolk Zero, Forties, Cromarty, Forth, Tyne, Dogger, German Bight, Humber, Thames, Trafalgar, Fitzroy, Hebrides, Bailey, Fairisle, Faroes and South East Iceland. The general synopsis at midday. Low Viking 981 expected East German Bight 992 by 1200 Sunday. The area forecasts for the next 24 hours. Viking North of Sierra, South of Sierra. Cyclonic 4 to 6 becoming northerly 6 to get 8, but 4 to 6 south of Sierra. Good. 40s Cromarty 4 time Dogger. West or northwest 6 to get 8, increasing severe gale 9 for a time Cromarty, veering north 4 to 6 later, squally showers, moderate or good. Fisher, southwest 4 to 6, becoming cyclonic 2 to 4, then north 4 to 6 later, squally showers, good. German Bight, Humber, Thames, west or northwest 5 to 7, increasing gale 8 for a time, squally showers, good. Dover, White, Portland, Plymouth, North Biscay, westerly or northwesterly 5 to 7, decreasing 3 or 4 later, showers, good. South Biscay, variable 2 to 4, becoming east or northeast later, showers, good. South Fitzroy, northeasterly 6 to gale 8, occasionally severe gale 9 at first in fast showers, moderate or good. North Fitzroy, northerly or northwesterly 4 to 6, becoming variable 2 to 4, then west or southwest 3 to 5 later, showers, good. Seoul, Lundy, Fastnet, Irish Sea, west or northwest 5 to 7, lacking southwest 3 to 5, occasionally 6 later in Seoul, squally showers, good, occasionally moderate. Shannon, Rockall, Malin, northwest 5 to 7, becoming variable 2 to 4 for time, then cyclonic 5 to 7 later, squally showers, then rain later, good, occasionally moderate. Hebrides, northwest 6 to get 8, veering northeast 3 to 5, then southeast later, squally showers, good, occasionally poor. Bailey, north or northeast 6 to get 8, becoming east or northeast 3 to 5, veering southeast 5 to 7 later, squally showers, good, occasionally poor. Fairisle, Faroes and Southeast Iceland, north or northwesterly 6 to gale 8, occasionally severe gale 9 at first, veering north or northeast 4 to 6. Here's Lauren Rivera with a look ahead to the morning.
My customer is the scientist, Professor Alice Roberts, who remembers an early archaeological encounter when she was just 8. Researchers were unwrapping an Egyptian mummy, and there was a live feed to this foyer at the History Museum. It was very difficult to get me away from that because I was utterly entranced by the unwrapping of this mummy and what they researchers are going to find. Professor Alice Roberts, my castaway, Dean Jones, to be a her justice tomorrow morning at 11:15. BBC News at 6 o'clock. This is Lisa Costello. Good evening. President Putin has said that 4 gunmen who killed at least 130 people at a concert hall near Moscow have been arrested. The UN Secretary General has visited the Rafah border with Gaza, saying it's time to silence the guns and stop the nightmare. The Princess of Wales has been praised by the NHS and authorities for speaking publicly about her diagnosis. And after nearly 60 hours of grueling effort, a British runner has become the first woman to complete one of the world's hardest ultramarathons. The Russian authorities say the number of people killed by masked gunmen who stormed a concert hall near Moscow yesterday now stands at 133. In a televised address, President Putin claimed all 4 attackers had been arrested after they tried to flee to Ukraine. Kiev has strongly rejected any link with the violence, and the Islamic State group has said it was behind the killings. The first report tonight comes from our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, who travelled to the scene of the attack in Krasnogorsk.
By now, it's clear that this was the deadliest attack in Russia in 20 years. And today, Russia's president promised retribution.
Все исполнители, организаторы и заказчики.
In an address to the nation, President Putin vowed that all the perpetrators and organisers of crime will be punished, whoever they are and whoever tried them. He said that 4 gunmen attacked Crocus City Hall had been arrested. Russian officials have been trying hard to link this brutal crime for which the Islamic State has claimed responsibility. Inside what is left of the Crocus City concert hall, workers cleared rubble in search for more bodies. The attackers not only killed with bullets, but fire, setting the building alight, turning the rock concert into an inferno. Outside the building, J-Lo keeping laying clouds in honor of the dead. Margarita Nilsson, she was at the property when the shooting began, got out alive.
Когда домой пришла, и when I got home, I hugged my children, fell to my knees and said, I can't begin to describe what happened there. They were shooting at us. I was hysterical. My husband could barely watch. The children were terrified. They just hugged me.
When so many people never made it home, President Putin has declared Sunday a national day of mourning.
Russia's attempt to link the violence to Ukraine has provoked outrage in Kiev. Our Eastern Europe correspondent Sarah Rainsford, who's in the Ukrainian capital, has been gauging the action.
Officials here in Kiev have moved quickly to rule out any link to the Moscow terror attack. The Foreign Ministry, a presidential advisor, and the military intelligence agency all say Kiev authorities in Ukraine was not involved, and that its role in Russia will be decided on the battlefield. The Russian FSB security service is now claiming the Moscow attackers were caught on their way to Ukraine, and that they had contact from the other side supporting them. But an intelligence representative here has called the idea the gunmen would head for the Ukrainian border utterly absurd. Andrei Yusuf told the BBC the area is full of Russian military and security services, but he said any terrorists fleeing the scene of an attack would have to be stupid or suicidal or want to get caught and head there. One of the criticisms of this attack that here in Kiev is that Russia will use it to escalate its aggression against Ukraine even further. But blaming Kiev with its Western allies will be a way of rallying support for Vladimir Putin and
his full-scale invasion and mobilizing more Russian soldiers for that fight. The United States said in solidarity with the people of Russia and strongly condemned what it called terrorism. America had warned Moscow of an imminent attack. Security correspondent Jordan Carrera examined James North that day.
There were always questions as to why attacks on stops were detected, but a warning issued by Washington
Ross Spears, obviously the we're going to have a really tough time with this.
Well, they went on something so private and hard, and the public eye on it was really tough.
It's believed Prince Harry and Meghan have contacted the Prince and Princess of Wales, as well as releasing a statement wishing Catherine health and healing. The Princess has also received support from world leaders, such as President Biden and President Macron. Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer have both sent their best wishes. Buckingham Palace is calling for privacy and wants to draw a line under the media storm of recent weeks. The Princess says her focus now is on making a full recovery and is asked for space for herself, her husband and 3 young children.
The UN Secretary General has renewed his call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, saying it's time to silence the guns and stop the nightmare. Antonio Guterres has been visiting the Egyptian side of the Rafah crossing. Now in Israel give an ironclad commitment to allow unrestricted aid into the territory. Correspondent Hugo Bashega was there.
On the Egyptian side of the Rafah crossing, convoys carrying basic supplies are waiting to enter Gaza, where the desperation only grows. The UN says more than 1,500 lorries remain in Egypt. Some have been here for weeks. Western countries and charities have blamed Israel for inspections that are slow and arbitrary. They say entire deliveries have been turned away because they included items like medical scissors or sleeping bags that have been banned by the Israeli authorities. Visiting the border, the UN chief Antonio Guterres said Palestinians in Gaza were stuck in a non-stop nightmare.
Here from this crossing, we see the heartbreak and heartlessness of it all. A long line of blocked red relief trucks on one side of the gates, the long shadow of starvation on the other. That is more than a tragedy, it is a moral outrage.
His visit happened just days after a UN-backed report said half of Gaza's population of 2.2 million people face catastrophic levels of hunger. Speaking to the BBC, Mr. Guterres urged Israel to lift the obstacles to the delivery of aid.
Do you think these obstacles are intentional? It is obvious that these obstacles are part of
The family said he had died at the age of 75 following a long battle with prostate cancer. The Metropolitan Police said the legacy of his work would continue. Sport now, and England take on their friendly against Brazil at Wembley in just under an hour's time, and the Women's Six Nations has got underway with a win for France over Ireland. With the details here, Tom Wilkinson.
Gareth Southgate has the chance to test his side against 5-time World Cup winners this evening, with Euro 2024 preparations moving into a crucial phase. Gary Flintoff will be watching at Wembley.
Well, after days of MPs and even the Prime Minister playing some difficult football with England's new kit, the football camp finally takes centre stage. This, a prestigious, friendly and a warm-up game for Euro 2024, sees Gareth Southgate's men take on the nation that conjures up the visions of Pelé, Jorginho and Ronaldinho in the yellow and blue. Both sides have injury concerns, but England still looks strong. Aston Villa's Ollie Watkins leads the line in the absence of Harry Kane. The Newcastle's Anthony Gordon is having his England debut. Many recognisable faces in the Brazil team, including Gordon's Newcastle teammate Bruno Guimaraes, and Jude Bellingham's club colleague, Vinicius Junior.
In the Women's Super League, Manchester City beat Manchester United 3-1 at the Etihad. City have a 3-point lead over second-placed Chelsea, who play tomorrow. City manager Gareth Taylor has been asked if they're feeling confident.
We are. We've always been confident that we can do it. The hard part is actually doing it. We know we're going up against a title rival who's been successful over the last few years. A great credit to them, but we're trying to change that.
Also in football, Chesterfield invited back to the English Football League with 5 games to spare in the National League, whilst Sven-Göran Eriksson has overseen a 4-2 win for the Liverpool Legends over Ajax in their charity match at Anfield. To rugby union, France have run in 5 tries to open its winners of Six Nations with a 38-17 win over Ireland, with the Irish flanker Adele McCarthy.
The girls fought an awful lot of hard today, and I think we actually competed with France at times to score a try in the 77th minute because we put pressure on them. But just a sign in this team, but I think we can take a lot of confidence. So what we did to France today.
In the second game of the day, it's currently Wales 6, Scotland 17. England has scored 30-17. Whilst the Saracens enjoyed a 52-7 premiership win over Harlequins. And Red Bulls Max Verstappen will be in pole position for the Australian Grand Prix.
Dawn Wilkinson, a British runner, has become the first woman to complete one of the world's hardest ultramarathons. Jasmine Paris, who's a 40-year-old vet from Midlothian, completed the 100-mile course in the US state of Tennessee just inside the penalty time of 60 hours. Simon Jones reports on the race with Becca Peter.
As Jasmine Paris completed the course with just 99 seconds to spare, she slumped to the ground, her legs scratched from days of running through thick woodland, and complete exhaustion etched onto her face. Known as the race that eats its young, the Blackpool Marathons involve running up and down the equivalent of 60,000 feet, about twice the height of Mount Everest, in extreme heat. The race is also known for its odd traditions. It's inspired by a famous prison escape. It begins when the race director lights a cigarette, and the courses are marked so competitors have to memorise the route. Jasmine Paris can't currently speak because she did so much heavy breathing over the 100 miles. In a statement she said, although her body had been screaming at her to stop, she was overjoyed with her achievement.
The headlines now. The Russian President Vladimir Putin says all 4 gunmen who stormed a concert hall near Moscow yesterday have been detained. The number killed in the violence has risen to 133. The United States has strongly condemned this reported terrorist act. Health leaders have praised the bravery of the Princess of Wales for revealing she has cancer. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has again called for a ceasefire at Gaza as he visited 2 crossing points in the conflict. BBC News.
Read by Lisa Costello. Now, just before loose ends, let's look ahead to Broadcasting House at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Andy O'Connell. Hello.
A national day of mourning planned in Russia tomorrow after the concert hall murders. President Putin links them to Ukraine will round up the world reaction.
At home, as support circles in Princess of Wales, we asked how to tell children about a cancer diagnosis. Leo Varadkar and Laura Kenny are quitting their respective worlds, one the T-shirt, the other the Olympic. How can you change course midway? And follow along as we test out the recipe Benedict made up by artificial intelligence. That's the age of sounds and on air here at Radio. Thanks, Paddy. Looking forward to joining you from the morning. Hello, on Radio 4. Mr. Anderson.
Yes, thank you, Lobo. The loose ends and a big week for news. And for once, the opinion polls has got it about right. With their swingometers and surveys, YouGov and Gallup and all the others predicted a landslide victory for Vladimir Putin. And in the event, the veteran Russian president from home, beating all possible opponents alive or dead, in prison or in exile, banned from media or banished to a Siberian prison camp. Things are not quite so simple in this country. Political commentators are confident about predicting who will win the next general election, but no one is quite sure who might be leading the Conservative Party by the end of next week, or which party E. Anderson will be in next month, or whether Jeremy Corbyn or Diane Abbott will be allowed back into the Labour Party anytime soon. However, here on Loose Ends, we have a free and fair selection of popular personalities, including the award-winning comedian Mark Watson, whose latest story is coming to a theatre near you between now and November. And we have the chart-topping, it's not quite as well-renowned as the sisters in this play, explores why that might be.
Explore the sibling rivalry, the jealousy and the competition that may have led to Andy slightly less at home than Charlotte.
Well, and you're playing Charlotte, and I suppose there's the odd finger pointed at you in terms of it went off.
Well, I sort of point the finger at myself, but there's a lot of competition in this retelling, so yeah.
Well, of course, Charlotte's well-known for writing Jane Eyre, and Emily, your sister, and other sister, is Wuthering Heights. Two great actors coming from the same little rectory in Yorkshire. But of course, Anne wrote Agnes Grey and the Tenant of Welfare Hall. So it's an extraordinary output. And I suppose the average National Theatre audience and indeed listener to this show will know those basic facts. But there's more to be discovered.
Yes, there's more to be discovered. I think a lot of the content of it is the sisters that didn't apologise as through some sad little sisters and the back end of nowhere, and that it was quite remarkable they came up with what they did, but actually what if they were just brilliant, normal women like we see today, and sort of it's not a reimagining, but it's perhaps a more realistic telling of how they might have interacted.
Yeah, well, they're portraying, or not portraying as women of today, but there's quite a lot of, that's we call it on radio, well, epic which I don't think would be the way that the daughters of Yorkshire would have spoken, but it's more like women of today are on a empire.
It's more accessible, I suppose, in terms of the language of today, yes, but it's used cleverly.
Not gratuitous. Well, the other thing that's relevant, of course, which is very much of their time, is the shadow of death. So them and indeed they lost other siblings who might have written some of the great books. Boyd, and then Emily in particular had a gift from Nice, died almost immediately.
Yeah, they were, it was, what could be classed as tragic. They lost their mother, then they lost their two older sisters, and yes, there was a lot of tragedy in their lives, and yet they prevailed, and actually, perhaps they were okay with that, and really explore, how they dealt with the grief and, throughout, made their own way, and quite successfully, I think.
So poor young Anne wrote Agnes Grey, which is a story about the governors, and then you, I'm pretty great one, you Charlotte, saying, I've written Jane Eyre, and okay, here you go, it's a governess, but it's a completely different take on it.
Yeah, so they both write about governesses, and then Charlotte gets public terms and takes all the glory. She excuses it quite deftly, and seems to get away with it.
Yes, well,
Let's see.
it's a good book, I suppose.
There you go.
Yeah. And I want, so this is National Theatre, this is your the great successes as in the acting profession. And the last time you were, I think you were in the Upstart Pro, which was on stage. And then COVID got in the way, and then I think you went back after.
We did go back, we did 5 weeks.
I mean, I've always believed that if I work hard, if I'm careful and considerate and kind, amazing things will happen in my life. That's how it's been. And every time that racism raised its head, I didn't make it a chip on my shoulder. I saw that as a fuel for me to prove that I could be as good as, and different, and better. And I saw fitness on television as something that was just thrown away. And I believe that with the experience I picked up, after being homeless, I'm never getting a job working for a famous food company who sent me away on the essentials of management. Taught me everything about production, distribution, marketing. Marketing was a key thing. That's what I mean. How you market yourself. And when I decided to create the character Mr. Motivator, it was a drive to say, let me repackage fitness.
You've spoken about being adopted when you were a tiny baby, 3 months old. In 2000, you moved back to your place of birth to Jamaica to be with your daughter.
Yes.
Have you ever looked into your birth, Mom? Have you ever wanted to? Oh, really?
Sure. She lived in this country. She had a daughter who lived here. Wow. The daughter called her up and said, there's a man on television saying that Enid Richards is his mother. So I met her when I was 45.
Okay.
I met my dad when I was 25, so we never married.
Yeah.
Right? My mother's now died. Right? My father's died. So that is.
Are you in touch with your sister?
In a roundabout way, when you're 45 and all of a sudden you have this new family, it was never glamorized in my mindset that, look, here
Hello,
is the find them.
食緊嘢啦，你哋食緊嘢啦。足球喎，7點鐘開播。England 對巴西。
Your adopted dad was
Channel 4。
strict, was he?
He was strict, but
Okay.
this is the foundation stone to make what makes me who I am. He took you to church. He would beat you, yes. And he would push you down the Boys Brigade route. Short step fast was the motto of the Boys Brigade. What did I learn? I learned how to deal with people, how to respect people. And all those things became the foundation stones of who I am today. And so communication. That's my love. What have I learned from them? Grab my daughter as often as I can, cuddle her and kiss her and reassure her and tell her. So there's an upside to everything. It's just a question of how you take it on, right? And so I look at everything that's gone on for me. It's been a great journey. I'm so far removed now from anything I ever expected to when I left school. Right? I've worked with 3 prime ministers. I've had an MBE. I mean, come on. My life would be busier since not being on television.
Yeah.
Television is nearly an advert for what I do. Right? But when you're out there doing music festivals and there's 10,000 people who've done right?
You're huge at the festival. I saw you at Camp Festival last year. This year you're doing loads of festivals. Well, you're doing 12 festivals. Imagine a festival crowd trying to get them up and moving. But you managed to do it.
We don't do stadiums, we don't do Grammys. It's movement to music and art. And have fun.
If you fancy having a look at Mr. Motivators Club, you can find all details online as well as all his festival appearances, all his workouts, all there. Loads of stuff on YouTube as well, Mr. Motivator. And the motivational experience Nottingham tomorrow. Enjoy it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I would have been invigorated.
I'm going to work on you later.
Yeah. I've got a pod. I play football every day. Followed by a curry and some beers. And that's Jimmy Jack. Very steady state. Going to some more music now from soul jazz singer, songwriter, composer, arranger, Sarah, turning out. Sarah, who recently released her latest single, Alone Again. So you studied jazz voice at the Trinity Lamont Conservatoire of Music and Dance in London. So was it jazz music what you were always attracted to?
All music actually, but jazz was the part I found studying. Because I think vocally it's the thing that gives you maybe the most freedom music. So that for me, I was drawn to that.
Now I know you were born in Berlin, your father's from Somalia, are there elements of Somalia?
Don't run away, 'cause it won't go, it won't go away. Don't run away, 'cause it won't go, it won't go away. Don't run away.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That's Alone Again. That's Sarah spelled S-A-H-R-A, and Alone Again is available now. Excellent. So let's come to the award-winning stand-up comedian Mark Woodson, who a familiar voice here on Radio 4 and an amiable presence on many a TV panel show and other programs, as well as being the co-presenter of a snooker podcast with Stephen Hendry. Have I made that up, or is that... No, I know you haven't made that up. Yeah, weird. You made that up. Yeah, it's not exciting enough to die about. Half a dozen, maybe 7 novels and other non-fiction books as well. At the moment, Mark is doing his day job, well, his evening job, on tour with his show Search. So welcome, Mark. What are you searching for? What are you getting searching for? Well, my son, I've got a kid slightly younger than me, so I'm talking about 14 and 10, and for years, obviously, I've been on their main source of information as to dad, the endless questions. And the reason I noticed that they don't ask me those questions because my son has Google himself, has a smartphone. Oh, right. So, for the first time, to confront the fact that my kids have got a way of seeing the world which isn't shaped by me, and the way it is, I've got not no control parental filters. Specifically, what triggered this thought was I caught myself on 14 years ago smartwatch girlfriend. But I couldn't resist what came up. Sarah Cox and Mr. Motivator Derek Evans. Today's producers Claire Bartley, the studio managers were Andrew Garrett and Giles Aspen. Next week my guests will include Kush Jumbo and Daniel Mays. We'll see you now. Goodbye.
Loose Ends was presented by Brian Anderson. If you'd like to hear a longer version of the program, search for Loose Ends on Easy Sounds. After the news, Mark Coles looks back at how a cricket mad schoolboy became First Minister of the land of his father. A journey from Zambia to Cardiff by way of rural Dorset.
It's 40 years since the Terminator travelled back in time to become an instant movie classic.
Not just a machine, he's a machine covered with flesh.
But did this science fiction film also predict the future?
We're beginning to see autonomous and semi-autonomous machines on the map.
I'm Beth Singer, an anthropologist specialising in artificial intelligence. Now for Radio 4, I'll be exploring the Terminator's legacy and how it shaped our view on AI.
This is science fiction about a future that we should be aware of because it's not one that any of us really wants.
I'll be back, 40 years of the Terminator, on Radio 4 Easy Sounds, this Tuesday morning at 11:30.
BBC News at 7 o'clock.
Vladimir Putin has blamed Ukraine for yesterday's massacre at a concert hall near Moscow, promising Russians there will be harsh retribution for everybody involved. Russian authorities say more than 130 people were killed when masked gunmen started shooting and set the Crocus City concert on fire. The Islamic State group has claimed it was behind the killings, but President Putin said the suspects were brought into Ukraine. Ukrainian presidential advisor Andrei Yusov does not believe.
That is absolutely absurd, because the Russian regions bordering Ukraine are states full of military and special services. If we are to suppose that the people who committed this terrorist attack were moving in that direction, then that means either they are stupid or suicidal, or they wanted to be caught.
Cancer Research UK says, while revealing her diagnosis, the Princess of Wales has contributed to a significant increase in public awareness. The charity says there's been an uplift in traffic to its website after Catherine announced she was being treated for the disease. The anti-knife campaigner Richard Taylor, whose 10-year-old son, young Lolo, was stabbed 24 years ago, has died. Taylor was 75 and had cancer. Two skiers have been killed after an avalanche in southeast Switzerland. Police say the men, aged 54 and 57, were dragged around 200 metres down rocky terrain at a Costas resort yesterday. A 40-year-old runner from Midlothian has become the first woman to complete one of the world's hardest ultramarathons. Jasmine Tanner finished the 100-mile course in the US state of Tennessee, won the middle one for the daughter and placed to the UK. Stan returning to his homeland in 1976 to take up a job as a vet in Monmouthshire. Peter cruelly disappointed. Sophomore told the BBC's Wales cast yesterday.
My father wanted to move to Wales, and he got offered a job that was withdrawn when he turned up with my mum, and he found a groundship.
The anger and sense of injustice still palpable in the century on. The family relocated to England, his father getting a village vet job in rural Dorset, or his brother eradicated.
In some ways, we were insulated from much of what could be considered racial prejudice because of the position that my dad held in the community. He was
at least the point where the nation is going to have to be secured, and then a new level of treatment emerged, mainly cascading on, and it worked. And then if you cascade with 20-year-old journalists, Warner's health minister having to make a decision on that drug to prevent people from acquiring HIV. And he went against official endpoints at the time to ensure that PrEP were also available for free on the NHS.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. What's the to cram in? At Aberystwyth, he got involved in student politics, became president of the University Student Union, and leader of the Welsh National Union of Students, its first black president. Political consultant Dorothea Hodge, meeting Gething at a conference, ending up sharing a flat with him for a while, and the good socialist divvying up the domestic duties.
Of course, he's a bit of a chore. My other colleague was the secret tidier cleaner, and one job was to take out the rubbish.
Got off rather lightly, I suspect. Turns out Gething was hiding a culinary light under his
basically seen all the different types of things that nature can do. And we've seen the matter particles, the force particles that are allowed, and the last thing, in a sense, that could also be allowed is the Higgs boson. And this was what was needed to give masses to the other particles. So the way in which the Higgs does this is to create what's called electromagnetism. So this is a symmetry between the force and electromagnetism. To explain what a symmetry is, I would give the analogy of you have two twins that are naked, one can tell them apart. But then now we can tell one of the twins from the other. So the weak force particles are like twins, but there are three of them. They're actually triplets. And these triplets, we can interchange it in theory, and it will stay the same. You can't tell the difference. The Higgs boson is the thing that addresses and this other particle is messed up and looks kind of fancy, so it goes off and marries another particle.
What sort of things do they wear? Retro punk, or what's the ideal kind of outfit?
So this Higgs boson dresses up as one of the triplets and dresses that nice suit. This particle goes up and marries another force particle.
error, and that's what we call electromagnetic force in the weakness. So what do we know about the way that Higgs began to play that role as the universe unfolded from the Big Bang onwards? Everywhere around us is the Higgs boson with an energy configuration that enables it to do its job to give masses to the other particles. But as you go back to the Big Bang, as you go back to the early universe, that energy is higher, and the energy configuration of the Higgs boson is different. So we think of this energy configuration as being above the kind of configuration that it is in now, and we visualize it by, say, a somewhere at the center of the next hat, at the top of the hat. So when it's sitting at the center, then it's switched off. It's not giving mass to the other particles. And as the temperature of the universe drops since the Big Bang, then at some point the energy configuration allows it to go to this value that it has nowadays and do its job. But we still don't know how the transition happened, and this is one of the reasons why we want to understand the Higgs metal to understand this.
Sarah, I just wanted to ask, there was a point there about 5 minutes ago where we had possibly the first time where subatomic particles were beginning to enter Wilson's dragnet. And I'm kind of intrigued because also talking about when you mentioned, for instance, the Mexican hat, the physics seems to me, especially particle physics, it's always looking for good metaphors and for good similes. So how difficult is it to find the best translation, the best visual translation for something very hard to picture in itself? Do you have a favourite one?
So yeah, my favourite one is the snow field. So the Higgs field is a field of snow throughout the whole universe, and then the particles get their mass depending on how much they interact with that field. So if, for example, you imagine a skier, which is very nice, going across the top of the snow field, this is like the photon. It's essentially not like a photon, I would imagine, was on a paraglide, not even interacting with the field at all. And then somebody on skis is like an electron, kind of touching it a little bit, but not interacting too much. And then my favourite particle is the top one. If possible, we're looking for differences between the standard model predictions and what we actually measure in our experiments. And then that could show that something else is happening with the Higgs field that can't be accounted for with the quarks and the other particles that we've measured. So it's a really great way that we can use it as a link between the Higgs boson and potentially being able to understand dark matter.
So I just wanted to say that we also see dark matter in the early universe, so we can't be planets because we see the effects of dark matter in the light from the Big Bang, the cosmic microwave background. So we know already from that there was some kind of dark matter particle. And it's not as exotic as it sounds. We already know of a particle that doesn't interact with light that exists everywhere in the universe.
Even right now?
Even right now, going
so
to
the
us.
Mars Collider is full of it.
Everywhere.
So
you're full of it. I'm full of it.
That's factual, right?
So there's a billion of these particles going through your eyeball every second, right?
Just to clarify, because the committee was again, Siobhan is talking about neutrinos, which are particles that interact only by the weak force. And I thought he said this remarkable thing, that billions of them are passing through your head now.
But only you.
So one of the ideas, to bring back to dark matter, one of the ideas is that perhaps dark matter is a particle that interacts by the weak force. But then you need an awful lot of them passing through your head to have a very slim chance of seeing it. We have experiments trying to do that, or it would be very unlikely would make a dark matter particle in a collision with a light hadron collider, but not.
Yeah, so we're often looking for things that are fleeting in our measurements. So we don't just measure the particles that come out and only measure those. We also look for example, missing momentum. So we have conservation of momentum in our detector, and so we can tell when stuff is missing. And neutrinos are very, very light, so if we got stuff missing that was very heavy, then that would be an indication, for example, that there could be dark matter in the measurement. And we're also doing some
technique. We've always assumed that the collisions happen and these particles are so short-lived that whatever they change into happens right at the heart of the detector. So we trained all of our algorithms to select the data to look for stuff happening in the sensor, but it could be that dark matter or some other new physics travels a bit of a distance through the detector before it then changes into something we could measure, and we call these long-lived particles. And so it could be that they're interacting at the edge, and so we have to redesign all of our algorithms to look for things that are happening there.
Great, so they could be there in the data.
Yeah, they could already be there, and it's just not been looking for them in that sense. So that's one of the other ways that we're trying to innovate and think, well, how else could it show up in that?
This idea of the universe having mass is the first time that I'd ever thought of when I started reading about the research that was going on. So could you have a universe without mass?
You could have all kinds of universes.
Right.
If the Higgs hypothetical configuration right now in our universe, in the standard model of particle physics, as best as we can measure the parameters of this theory, is telling us that the energy configuration is not stable. So it could change to another energy configuration and induce a catastrophic vacuum decay death of the universe that would just wipe out the entire universe.
Oh.
Here that the Large Hadron Collider would have nothing to do with it. Just
Passing out your bit at the end. We think that if I was Dan Brown, I'd keep that answer there.
You're saying that you built this which holds everything in the universe together, and you discovered it's unstable. That's what you're saying.
Within the standard model of particle physics, yes, which is why I really hope that there's something beyond that.
We need to get building the next one now.
What do you call a cliffhanger? That's just fun.
Why are you sitting here doing a radio show? You should be getting off backstage, get your toolbox out, start making the next one.
Well, just to reassure, if it is indeed unstable, it was unstable whether we detected it or not, but it's got nothing to do with us. It's got nothing to do with us. And does that make me? That's just with. Well, you're just advocating. You're advocating for ostrich-like behaviour. Why does it matter? You say that if you don't know, it's fine.
In the last few minutes, we've all got together and see what they are to the audience.
So then after the audition, when you still don't know if you've got the part or not, and for a while you'd rather not know. It's like that, isn't it?
Probably what you expect.
About all of this. How are you just sort of, yeah, well, if we knew the universe was unstable, then it would have all gone to pieces by now.
Because we went
How
to
are
see
you
it
so relaxed? How are you so relaxed about this situation? Is not everyone else really stressed by
I'll
it?
tell you why, because he finished his degree and he's worked out a get-out clause. But this is the thing, this is pointing towards the future, it's a signal that there's something deep that we don't understand.
Right, so some theorists, myself and many of my colleagues, who try to explain this by saying it wasn't an accident. The dynamics of the early universe actually balance the entities are right at the edge of this precipice. And this is something that we're actually trying to look for signals for.
Reassuring.
We're on the precipice, still on the precipice.
Yeah, I know we've run out of time, so we can just we also audience question as well. And he wants to know what is the secret of the universe most like to uncover and why? Brian, you go.
Well, yes, we're having physicists, and you said about most physicists. Usually, when we ask this question, the aim is to generate fewer sentences. Yeah, in this case, they're all very specific and precise. They actually are answers to the question as posed. So, for example, where does it start? So the joke is what is the secret of the universe, most like to know why. Where does it end?
Do jazz hands. I'll do jazz hands for my one. Dark matter. There we go, yeah, that is still didn't quite get it right, did it?
Is space-time just a side effect of the selective quantum field trying to achieve their respective lowest possible energy states?
Right.
Throughout history, our relationship with trust has evolved, and each change has transformed how we live and work. These trust shifts will shape everything from how we bank and trade goods to how we mine and consume information. In a new series, I'll be exploring this intriguing history of trust and the trust challenges we may face in our near future.
We trust the people behind the technologies.
The Trust Shift with me, Rachel Watson, on Radio 4 BBC Sounds, this Monday to Friday at 1:45.
BBC News at 8 o'clock. The United States has said it stands in solidarity with Russia following the shooting at a concert hall in Moscow yesterday. Police were crying. More than 130 people were killed. In a TV address, President Putin linked the violence to Ukraine and despite the Islamic State shooting carried out the attack. Kiev strongly denies any involvement. Mark Galeotti is a British historian who's written more than 20 books on Russia, who says the incident will harm President Putin's reputation.
I think that it absolutely speaks to an insecurity that so many Russians are feeling, especially now that also they're facing the threat of Ukrainian drones. And that sense of Putin as the man who at least could provide some sort of protection from a dangerous world, as that begins to erode, people are going to look for alternative answers. So little bit by little bit, it is part of the erosion of Putin's legitimacy.
The Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says the Israeli military has killed 19 people while they were waiting for aid on the outskirts of Gaza City. They're said to have been hit by tank fire and shelling at the roadside distribution point. The Israeli army has denied firing on the crowd. Cancer Research UK says by revealing her diagnosis, the Princess of Wales has contributed to a significant increase in public awareness. The charity says there's been an uplift in traffic to its website since Catherine announced she was a British runner has become the first woman to complete one of the world's hardest ultramarathons. Jasmine Paris is a 40-year-old vet from Midlothian who completed the 100-mile course in the US state of Tennessee just inside the permitted time of 60 hours. The course involves 60,000 feet of climb and descent, around twice the height of Mount Everest. The Russian Soyuz rocket is heading to the International Space Station and is due to dock on Monday. 3 astronauts on board are from Russia, Belarus and the United States. Space is one of the... So we've cropped and filtered an image and combined it with an edited soundbite from this program, and we've sent it out into the world to mingle in the stew of all the other fragmentary messages and mashed up images.
The soundbite wasn't invented by Twitter.
Margie Bursky is a writer and academic based in Sydney, Australia, and is the author of the book This Is Not a Remix.
We've been complaining about soundbite culture for the 1980s at least, but what happens now is the soundbite isn't just a thing in a television program or a radio program that then never accessed again, right? So what happens is that the BBC tweets a short soundbite and then it has this new conscious life. It's detached from its mothership. One thing that can be a kind of marketing, but it might also be the only thing that the person consumes. You know, it might work, it might do something for them. Quotes can be very effective. And this is where, you know, we were sort of talking about how music kind of works that way. Samples can come into their own. They might be from a particular recording. But once liberated, there's something new, even under exactly the same.
Mankind has been seeking out ways of everything that influences his own life or the life of a nation to which he belongs.
This is a film about the events in Iran in 1953, where the CIA...
Too much is a bit of a legend and a personal hero of mine. He's worked closely with Francis Ford Coppola for over 50 years on films like The Conversation, The Godfather, and Apocalypse Now. He's a polymath, stories about soundless images, and he's working on London at the moment on a new documentary about the coup in Milan in 1953.
I'm assembling the first cut of the film, and we're about a quarter of the way through, I would say. Also, interestingly, we're were involving some aspect of the process of making this film. How do you make a film like this? So you see the editing room, you see some of the shooting going on, and discovering archive stuff, discovering old 4-inch tapes with speeches and things.
Lot of people physically handling both film and spotted sound tape and so on and so forth, and doing many rooms. How many do you have now?
There's me and the director, Huggy, and an associate editor, basically 3 people. The last time I tallied it up, we had 356 hours of material. So just keeping your mitts on all of that material would have been a full-time job, probably a dozen people. If we were making this back 25, 30 years ago.
Yep, digital technology has changed the way cultural knowledge works. It's definitely changed the way I work, and it's probably changed the way you think and live, the way you spend time, and the things you consume. It underpins the arithmetic of editing works today. Probably the greatest theoretician in cinema, probably one of his greatest directors. Robert Marshall translated the writings of Zurich, said by Eisenstein. And here he is in 1973, remembering Eisenstein's lectures in London in the late 1920s. Already, Eisenstein has seen that humans have always sought to construct edited versions of the world they live in.
He pointed out that in the earliest paintings, frescoes, bas-reliefs, they are really nothing but an extended cinematic graphic montage in their appropriate form, so that if you looked at Chartres and went around the outside, you would be able to see all the life of the apostles of Christianity and so on there shown in cinematic form. If you went to China 1,000 years ago, a high-ranking Mandarin at a party would take out a scroll.
Cutting implies several. It really should be called assembly. Of course, the most elementary form is the juxtaposition of what was our world like 15,000 years ago. Imagery. What was it like any time before the end of the 19th century? We can imagine, but never really know. The camera changed all that.
At the beginning of the 20th century was almost the simultaneous invention of quantum mechanics and physics and film. And both of them cut reality up into pieces. And so we were experiencing, at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, this realization that what we think of as continuous reality is in fact chopped up into little bits.
Okay, I think we should really edit in another voice here just to break it up. So let's splice in the writing itself, and then we can cut frequencies, writing and voice cells. Do that for a while since we both spoke about how our brains process information on their own, and we're just as oblivious to that as we are to the film qualities of us.
The rise of the edit in the last 120 years is in a large part a function of creation of narrative continuous and particularly to do with film and proto-film forms like zoetrope.
This Victorian toy, the zoetrope, was invented in the 1860s, but mainly marketed towards the end of the 19th century. And you'll see here some more examples of the sort of scripts that were used in the zoetrope. They were usually comic subjects, sometimes rather unpleasant. The person here with the mechanical fork was very unpleasant.
all depend on us viewing 22 frames a second and then placing them into the sequence.
It seems, and I would emphasize seems, that when you wake up in the morning, you remove the lens cap of sleep, and the next 16 hours or so are one continuous dolly shot, interrupted by a few blinks, and then at night you put the lens cap on and go to sleep. If that was true, it could have been that we decided to experiment with cutting film from one shot to another, and we invited an audience in, and we ran edited film, and they all got seasick and threw up. And after that experience, we would say, oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense. We're doing something very strange. But just the opposite happens. And I think what that tells us is that, in fact, we do live already in an edited world. Vision itself is cut up into pieces, and we neurologically knit it together so that it seems continuous, but in fact, the reality is that we're dealing with fragmented images every moment of our waking life.
You can view induction, the main method by which we pilot our way through the world, as being a narrative sequence in the anticipation patterns. So, induction is the idea of the sun will rise tomorrow, as we preceded that. But assuming induction is assuming a continuous narrative process that is unedited, which in turn implies the idea of a potentially entity sequence. So I think all of that hyper-consciousness here does come in the 19th century. It comes in with the Zoetrope.
In montage, always choose pieces which do not fit. Now, they say the camera never lies. That is, of course, unless the photos have been airbrushed, thanks to digital trickeries. This is nothing that I detest more than the stench of lies.
Close to the edit, part 3. I don't know about you, but my life's always happening now.
I don't know about you, but my life's always happening now. I don't know about you, but my life's always happening tomorrow. I don't know about you, but my life's always happening under the influence of very powerful LSD.
Some of the films
are in pre-edit age, showing itself in narrative construction.
This is BBC Radio 4. Now here's Front Row with Kirsty Lang. Hello tonight, the music you don't want to hear on a beach holiday. Steven Spielberg's seminal film Jaws was one of the inspirations behind Will Self's latest novel. Cinema also, I think, influenced the way
You know, it's the old kind of sawhorse about Joyce opening the first cinema in Dublin, you know, the impact of film and radio, I think, and all of these new media in the early 20th century on fiction.
Let's come to the subject that I had a concern. Very offended. Oh, my back. I want to go to Exeter. In time, there's the bell for September.
University where I work next year, so I think and frankly, you know, he was way out ahead of me in terms of incorporating filmic editing technique into the novel, using montage, match cuts, jump cuts, all of that is actually you're going to need a bigger module.
Got no paragraphs, no chapter breaks, or none of the usual furniture that we've come to expect from a novel. Why do you think that a story is better told with this?
It always strikes me with odd, it's actually to do with natural. You know, there aren't chapters in life. Life doesn't take place in these simple paths. You know, it's not like Kirsty and Will were on front row. We are on front row right now. It's all happening now. I don't know about you, but my life's always happening now.
crispiest direction. In contrast, always choose pieces that do not fit.
Who's got the story?
Historian raised it and had to run with it.
Now, how do you feel about sound effects and background music? Are they essential components in achieving a powerfully realistic atmosphere of nature, or are they an internal nuisance, interrupting and sometimes smothering the voice?
Close to the edit, part 4. How do you feel about sound effects and background music?
Now, how do you feel about the thought of children's whispers? Now, how do you feel about upright howls? Now, how do you feel about down
Enough of all this cutting. Is there not a voice in not editing sometimes? Leaving things alone, leaving things to speak for themselves. But it's anathema to a radio program like this, whether the listener realizes
Are you running? Okay, well, in no particular order,
you have a lot of experience, both with a large number of directors that you work with, also with the technology itself, and you're kind of renaissance editor in the sense that you don't limit yourself to picture. You're as fascinated by sound, if some say probably even more so than picture. What is your ideal relationship with, let's say, collaboration with a director?
The way it usually works, which is about as perfect as it can be, is that the director gives me a sense of where the project is going stylistically. If it's a dramatic feature, I absorb whatever I can from the screenplay, and also from reading any research materials that the author might have done. For instance, on English Patient, I read some of the background material on that. So I try to steep myself as deeply as possible in the subject matter, and then during shooting, I am assembling the material as it gets shot. I'm like the person at the end of the parade cleaning up as the parade goes by. And the idea is that a week or so after the end of shooting, I have finished assembling a rough version, a complete version of whatever got shot. And then the director comes in and stays working with me more or less, depending on the schedule of the director. But during that assembly, I don't have very much to do with the director on a daily basis. I am applied both by my own morality to say if I see some problem that really needs fixing, then I will go to the director and say, I think we need another shot here, or I wonder about that performance. It seems to be going in a strange direction. Maybe explain to me what's happening. Yeah. But I keep that to a minimum. And after that period, during the post-production period, if I'm working with Francis Coppola, he will come into the editing room for a day or two at a time, and then say, here's my ideas, and then he will go away for a couple of weeks, and I will continue with those ideas and finding out new ideas, which he encourages. And then he likes to be surprised, so when he comes back 2 weeks later, there's a new thing for him to look at. Contrast that with Catherine Bigelow, who on K-19, on the first day of post-production, she moved into the editing room, set up her office on the sofa in the editing room, and that was where she stayed the rest of the work. Although I would say she did leave at 7 o'clock at night, and then I continued to work for another 3 hours with ideas that had been spurred by what was done during the day. And in the morning, I would show these to her and say, Catherine, when I came in this morning, the mice have nibbled away at the film, and maybe we better look at it. And so this is my code for, I've done some things, let's look at it.
You kindly showed us what you're working on, and
noticed that it already had very sophisticated mix and very powerful music, and I was immediately drawn. What in fact I would assume the series of archives starts with. You already created a kind of attention there. Now, digital equipment allows you to do that 25 years ago. That I don't think would have been possible.
That's correct.
And you were one of the first people to embrace the idea of the digital. I think you were the first person to use Final Cut and so on. When I say embrace, I'm sure with with happiness, right? I mean,
yes. Yeah. No. I actually the first time I saw a digital editing system was in 1968 in Los Angeles. It was actually the first time I met Francis Coppola. I was working as an editor. So this was 1953, 54. And I came home from school one day, turned on the radio, which was my usual thing while I did my homework, and they happened to be in the middle of playing something that sounded exactly like something I recorded myself a couple of weeks ago. It was strange sounds organized in a musical fashion. What I later learned was this French school of music called musique concrète.
At the beginning of the 20th century, montage showed us the power of edit to create stories. Musique concrète shows us something else, that the edit could be the story itself. This was the gateway to a dizzying ride in the power of the edit across many different critical pursuits. And from then on, the content, the story, the music, the pictures, were just the means by which we could best experience the power of the edit.
There's definitely a secret history of the edit out there. When we talk about remix, we tend to talk about the introduction of the sampler, but there were all these ways that people kind of drew attention to things and edited things prior to those kinds of technologies.
Take this piece of music, for instance. One of the forerunners of the club remix scene in the 1970s. It's made for the dance floor and it's constructed from tape pause edits, literally from the clever use of the pause button on a tape recorder.
A lot of the ways that we edit on screen are still shaped by the ways that we edited with, tape or cutting or cut and paste. All these things, all the metaphors are shaped by a kind of analog past. Remember how much of our editing culture, if you will, is still shaped by pens and pencils and celluloid, tape and vinyl, acetate. All these things that were already visible.
Vicki Bennett is a collage artist, and she works with sound as well as still and moving images under the name People Like Us. Her instrument is the edit. She combines and collides different elements to create a new experience and a new story.
Recognize you under that.
I see what I do as part of folk culture, using materials that are immediately available to you at no or low budget. And so in my particular case, in the late 1980s, I was using hi-fi based materials, so stuff from the living room, which was basically a double cassette deck, record decks, and radio tunes.
Turn your radio down if I was
Sweet.
Sandra,
How are you supposed to start?
chronological order, and then you come back in where you started.
Everybody's tense.
If you were making a patchwork quilt, you'd have all these different bits of material, and then you'd put it next to something that you felt it had the resonance with. So you're making a flow of things which are unified, but they're actually fragments. You're unifying fragments.
It's a term phrase, unifying fragments. So that's what we're doing here. The fragments of this program. But it's not the whole story. The editor is also excluding, concealing, revealing, and, by the way, muddying the waters of authorship as well.
Bass player Joe there, he got a rhythm going, and this out there, Jimmy Nolan came in and started doing his thing, and Brown heard it and put the horns with it, and there you go, the funky drummer. Next thing I know, they tell me the samplers, the hip-hoppers got that drum pattern and running away with it on all their hip-hop songs. I went, what?
In my lifetime, I haven't really heard a lot of commercial recordings. I guess I've heard live recordings that were not structured. And I don't see something wrong with that. I think we made some really beautiful records. But then we have within that parents with sort of who gets to do the padding and what happens when people start kind of recording things and padding them up themselves and then actually re-releasing them. Our experience of media is seen always to be the end point when it gets published. And then there's this unspoken assumption, spoken assumption, that when something is published, that is the end point and that no one must touch it. I think a really important thing about people who work with this is they're unraveling that. They're not unraveling it backwards, they're unraveling it forwards. Because there should be no end point for the conversation. Just because something gets published, it doesn't mean that that's the end of it. It doesn't mean that it's dead. I think it's creatively anarchic to take published material and say, no, we're reopening the case. You know, it's like Sherlock. I do that in Adobe Premiere, so I do it.
Close to the edit, part 6. How will we know if it's real?
How can we trust our media? You know, how will we know if it's real? How will we know if they're kind of anxieties of other people? How will we focus on understanding the past? How will we distract ourselves from flying saucer?
The more we examine what we might call montage or editing, the deeper it seems to go into the culture in all kinds of unexpected ways.
Hold on to the embryo using one of my colleagues at the University of Manchester is about to modify a frog embryo using a new and powerful technique that will transform science, medicine, and perhaps the human race and the whole planet. This is the gene editing technology known by the acronym CRISPR.
And we are in an age today. We're in an age that is determined very, very powerfully by the visual media of mankind. Now they may work to visualize things to some extent, but really very fixated on it. They're very fixated on the way images are edited together. They're very fixated on the kind of truths or falsities that we extract from those edits.
In the age of the edit, the idea of the remix has shifted from the very shells of music into a way of describing the way we live now. Remix culture.
What we mean generally when we talk about remix culture now is a network culture. One of its chief characteristics is that a lot of media expressions are made of other media. So it's a kind of media made from media. So if I take a video from YouTube and I put
a different song on the top of it, we could call that a remix. So a meme could be a remix, an image with words over it, right? And then we get to more sophisticated things where we're actually cutting things up and really kind of remaking them. And one of the things about digital media is that it's all made of the same thing. It's all electricity, it's all those zeros and ones. And so it is easily manipulated.
I kind of go back to my own famous cinema advert for The Guardian about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that showed a man running.
And he won. Seen from one point of view, it's one impression.
Police officers chasing after him for the first second, then it pulls back and see the guy is one of the police, and they're chasing another guy.
Seen from another point of view, it gives one impression.
It was calling our attention to the idea that we're being manipulated by edits at various times.
But it's only when you get the whole picture you can fully understand what's going on.
The Guardian was setting itself up as a kind of honest, in a way, if you like, non-editor, somebody who is prepared to present information, not messing about the sequence in which it arrives, as it were, what the intelligence services call raw product.
I saw a few months ago this device that now you can have somebody talking on a screen and you can control their facial movements by your facial movements in live time. So that I could make Donald Trump say something he didn't say in real time by me saying it with my lips. And there's software now being developed that will take my voice and turn it into Donald Trump's voice. So, if we have those two things, then we can look at a shot with no cuts in it, and there's Donald Trump, and he's talking and he's saying something in his own voice that he never said. Where do we go from there?
I think the power of the editor is enormous, and for that reason, traditionally, the editor has stood as a gatekeeper as well. The editing function and the curatorial function have walked hand in hand, because there is an intuitive understanding of this problem with the capacity to edit data generated in that way. And as we've seen with numerous
All have been listening to a recording.
Lost Together was presented by Mike Biggis, the producer was Mark Williams.
On BBC Radio 4,
Got any idea who it's going to be tonight?
how is it stop recording?
Snowy, you're always asking me questions.
Part of a collection of rediscovered dramas.
No, just one thing. Stop running. You've got a job to do.
Bob Hoskins and Roy Kinnear star as hitmen. It's brilliant.
These two gossip will have to be.
On Radio 4 and BBC Sounds.
The idea. What's he playing these games for?
Hidden Souls, The Dumb Waiter.
What?
Tomorrow afternoon at 3.
Following that, Julie Harris and other dramas will be discovered and restored in a special program presented by Keith Wickham. Hidden Pleasures is tomorrow at 8:45 here on BBC Radio
4. Russia's President Putin says all 4 gunmen involved in the attack on a concert hall in Moscow yesterday have been detained. More than 130 people were killed at Krakow City Hall when gunmen began shooting and then set fire to the venue, causing the ceiling to collapse. The Islamic State group says it was responsible. President Putin has claimed those arrested were on their way to Ukraine. Our correspondent Sarah Rainsford is in the capital, Kyiv, because people there fear he'll use the attack as an excuse.
It was exactly what people were telling me as soon as the news reports were coming in. They were suddenly very worried. I mean, on the one hand, it's hard to see how things could get much worse in Ukraine. It's been 2 years of a sustained campaign by Russia against this country. Just on yesterday morning, there were 150 drones and missiles fired at Ukraine, hitting infrastructure here.
The Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza has said 19 people waiting for aid on the outskirts of Gaza City have been killed by Israeli forces. Their sector has been hit by tank fire and shelling. The Israeli army has denied firing on the crowd. Earlier, the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, renewed his call for an immediate ceasefire.
ceasefire and demanded Israel let in more aid. The father of the schoolboy Damilola Taylor, who was killed in South London 24 years ago, who died at age 65. His son was stabbed in the leg and left to die in the stairwell. Taylor dedicated himself to campaigning to help disadvantaged children. A British runner has become the first woman and one of only 20 people to finish one of the world's hardest ultramarathons within 60 allotted hours. Jasmine Paris from Midlothian completed the Barkley Marathon in Tennessee with 1 minute and 39 seconds to spare. And in football, England have lost their friendly to Brazil 1-0 at Wembley this evening. BBC News.
And on Radio 4, Chinatown, a drama set in the Staffordshire Potteries continues. The year is 1886, and a man of Telltale is responsible for the Pearson Aircraft Telltale for 4 years after a row with a body. Edwin Clay had that over, signed a letter to the France for their 5th wedding anniversary. Inspired by the novels of Ronald Lennox and dramatized by Sean McKenna and Lynn Copland. This is the world premiere.
Chinatown, episode 10.
Gosh, doesn't pay his debts for money, does he? I wonder if it but worth it, sure. The proud mother, yes. Gonna look very handsome, very nervous. It was just so beautiful. River, tall cottages, it was a lovely weekend. Ignores us, never meets my eye. I'm starting to think this is dirty. I'd be upset. I was, for a long time. But Henry couldn't just let him have that power. It's his loss, not ours. I think Paul doesn't housekeepers go pretty nice. I'll tell me so. I always like to start with Jerry Durst. When the train clears the smoke and suddenly you can see for miles.
Getting out of Park Town. Thursday's not so bad, is it?
Never been anywhere else. Very sweet. If we have a divorce, I'll say Thursday is house. Better.
Good. We're on holiday.
As long as you remember to do it, spend your time pouring over the plans for you before.
I didn't break them.
You thought about it though. Don't deny it.
Yeah. Well, can they can see?
Oh.
Happy anniversary.
It's not till Saturday.
I wanted you to have it now. It might cheer you up a bit.
I'm perfectly cheerful. What is it?
It's a ceremonial code.
So it is. You bought me a code.
It's Indian. 16th century. Isn't the carving beautiful? And really rare. It had to be wood, you see. It's our 5th anniversary. I had no idea what to get you, and then I came across this in Manchester. Do you like it?
You could always have bought me something in Paris.
I didn't want to risk leaving it too late.
Wow. It's very thoughtful.
You hate it?
No. No, it's just not what I expected for a wedding anniversary. I'll give you yours on Saturday. What time do we get to Euston?
4. Plenty of time to get to Victoria for the boat train.
Have you got a day to go to Paris?
Yes. And I've planned out a schedule for 5 days.
Busy now. Oh, where was the impressions exhibition?
I haven't put that in.
Edwin?
Must we? You know modern art makes no sense to me.
You have to open yourself to new experiences.
I think I do that.
Teach people who don't. We don't want too rigid a schedule. We're in Paris. We can let the winds of chance blow us where they will.
I don't want to miss anything important.
Are we at Hotel Continental?
No. I've been recommended a place which is popular with English tourists. Very comfortable, very reasonable.
In the Somerset?
No.
Edwin?
It's run by an Englishman. What?
Oh, no, just beside
earlier, but the sale starts at 7. Some of it sounds grand. Anyway, lot 1. We have extensive and hilarious shop and messy and what? Massive materials.
You need to have me out there.
You should say it. With the offices and facilities thereto belonging, situated being number 4 St. Peter Square in the parish of Bursley in the county of Stafford, and at present in the occupation of Mrs. Constance Povey Widow, under a lease expiring in September 1895. Owning a freehold will make that more certain. Good for you. Do you know about auctions? At least 1 or 2 of them. No, actually.
Pension mention, s'il vous plaît.
Punch is very rusty. I was good at it at school. Down York and I used to have conversations for hours at a time. Like nonsense. Police wacky, manifolds, the green dematon, that sort of thing.
Yes, beautiful.
Well, the station was rather pungent.
Once you register, let's go and have coffee and stare at everything. To be here is to be alive.
Of course. Right, no one. Yeah. Thank you. Like that. It's much more French. I put dinners here.
Edward, we're in Paris, the city of light. Things will be stunning.
Yes, of course. Shall we? Sorry, I was no, not possibly. Did you notice the woman in the office?
No.
Well, the door was open. Behind the desk, you must have seen her. Handsome.
Do you obey? I heard you say at church you'd like to give up the stuff. Well, I know your sample that you provided for. This is a chance for you. But
I'll have a lease.
I'll buy you out.
Lived here all my life, and they're silver.
You think he'll come back to the Five Towns after gallivanting about down south with all the gentry?
Oh,
I'm not asking you to go anywhere. Just lock up the doors between the shop and the house where the place is built. The house I let the shop. Leave the front door as it is. Everything will be made good. I'll plaster and repaper.
the parlour needs a new wisdom. That's what it's drafted.
You're agreeing.
I'll agree to think about it. How much do you want for the house?
20 a year.
To buy.
I'm not selling. No.
That would be my one condition. A lease for my lifetime plus one thing. And the building work making my satisfaction.
That's all the full condition.
We must have an offer in the shop, or why would you offer it? It's still good for business.
They'll do that.
At cost.
At a valuation I feel for.
For the remainder of the shop lease.
45.
70.
I'll settle at 50. I'll not go higher. Shake hands on it. All right about.
All right.
Building works a bit.
Overtaking the shop. Which
Why? It's a marriage. Mr. Big too.
What a shock.
The things.
Well, I'll have the papers drawn and sent. Good morning, Mrs. Colby.
You can't put up with this, Constance. Once it's done, it's done. So it's going to take some getting used to. I thought when Mr. Taylor proposed it that it would be answer to my prayers, but now I know he was naughty and morbid. They're going to keep banging. I'm afraid they are. And yet I've got that. Well, it doesn't matter. I said not to get any risk with him on account of you that he's so fat. Oh, but you did. I can't help it. Castle of clay I live here. Goodness.
I hope I'm not disturbing you. Hello, Mrs. Martin.
Councillor?
Forgive the intrusion, Mrs. I'm disturbed. My wife says I shouldn't, but I've been turning it over and over in my mind, and I think I have no choice.
That sounds rather dramatic.
Yes, I rather think it is.
Thank you. My darling Sophia, I have found you at last. Now I don't know what to say.
Gunnar Corcoran. In pen was Don Gillet, Gervais, Michael Birkinshaw, and Porter, Christopher Harper. Director was Gemma Jenkins.
And Chinatown concludes at the same time, making the residents of Florida have much decision. News at 10 with John Hamilton next. Let's keep looking at the weather forecast. Tonight will be chilly and dusty with clear spells and scattered showers. The north and west will see cold and wintry on the mountains. A few will move through the Midlands and East Anglia to the southeast for a time. Tomorrow will be a drier day with sunny spells and just a few showers. Brisk northwesterly will gradually ease and it will feel less chilly than it did today. By evening, Northern Ireland, West Wales, and the far southwest, but cloudier with spots of rain. On Monday, in the north and west, you can expect rain from northern Scotland, some hill snow, parts of central and eastern England should be drier and brighter. On 93.5 FM, 198 Longwave Radio, and on BBC Sounds, this is BBC Radio 4.
BBC News at 10 o'clock. This is John Hammond. Good evening. President Putin has said 4 gunmen have been detained for carrying out an attack on a concert hall in Moscow, which killed more than 130 people. President Zelensky has described Mr. Putin as scum for suggesting Ukraine was involved. The Prince and Princess of Wales say they're enormously touched by the kind messages they've received since Catherine revealed she has cancer. After nearly 60 hours of grueling effort, a British runner has become the first woman to complete one of the world's hardest ultramarathons. The Russian authorities say the number of people killed by masked gunmen who stormed the concert hall near Moscow yesterday now stands at 133. In a televised address, President Putin claimed all 4 attackers had been arrested after they tried to flee to Ukraine. Kiev has strongly rejected any link with the violence, and the Islamic State group said it was behind the killings. Our first report tonight comes from our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, who travelled to the scene of the attack in Krasnogorsk. By now, it's clear this was the deadliest attack in Russia for 20 years. And today, Russia's president promised retribution. In an address to the nation, President Putin vowed that all the perpetrators and organisers of crime will be punished, whoever they are and whoever is guiding them. He said the 4 gunmen who attacked the Krokus City Hall had been arrested. Hey, they've been fleeing to Ukraine. Russian officials have been trying hard to link in some way to a crime.
for which Islamic State has claimed responsibility. Inside what is left of the Crocus City Concert Hall, workers cleared rubble and searched for more bodies. The attackers not only killed with bullets, but with fire, setting the building alight, turning the rock concert into an inferno. Outside the building, day long, made clouds in honor of the dead. While the reason is, she was at the rock concert when the shooting began and got out alive.
That doesn't work this time. When I got home, I hugged my children, fell to my knees and said, I can't begin to describe what happened there. They were shooting at us. I was hysterical. My husband could barely watch. The children were terrified. They just hugged me.
But so many never made it. President Putin has declared Sunday a national day of mourning. Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelensky issued a furious response to the claim that the violence was linked to his country. Our Eastern Europe correspondent Sarah Rainsford, who's in the Ukrainian capital, listened to the president's nightly address.
Volodymyr Zelensky has reacted angrily to the accusations from Moscow that Ukraine is linked to this terror attack.
Absolutely.
He called Vladimir Putin and others dumb for trying to deflect blame. Earlier, Russia's president said that the storm that Crocus City Hall had been captured fleeing towards the Ukrainian border, but claimed that Captain Cross would help from the other side. In his own nightly address, Mr. Zelensky accused Russia itself of terrorism against Ukraine, destroying its cities and sending soldiers to torture and rape. He suggested that Russian people should question the work of their own security services instead of blaming Ukraine. Otherwise, he warned Vladimir Putin would simply use this attack to bolster his own personal power even further. There is concern here that Moscow will also use this attack as an excuse to escalate its war on Ukraine. But there's already missile strikes every day, including a massive attack on Monday morning that killed civilians in the city of Kharkiv, almost entirely without power.
The White House has said it stood in solidarity with the people of Russia, describing the Islamic State group as a common terrorist enemy. America had warned Moscow of the imminent attack. Our security correspondent, Jason Carrera, examines the claims made about the killings. There were always many interesting White House protected, but a warning issued by Washington on the 7th of March raises particularly difficult issues for Moscow. This indicated the US had intelligence about plans to target gatherings, including concerts. It is now apparent that the alert concerned the Islamic State group, even though America didn't say this at the time. The US says it did share the warning directly with Moscow, but 3 days before the attack, Vladimir Putin dismissed it. He suggested it was part of an attempt to destabilize Russia. The Islamic State group has said it was responsible for the violence. It has issued a video featuring 4 men it said were involved. The claim has not been verified. Jihadist groups in Central Asia have long-standing grievances against Russia going back decades, and Moscow also has been in Syria to support the Assad regime in its fight against IS. Despite this, President Putin appeared keen to suggest a link to Ukraine, possibly a way of potentially deflecting blame from a warning that may have been overlooked. Kensington Palace has just released a statement saying the Prince and Princess of Wales are enormously touched by the kind messages they received. Catherine revealed in a video message last night that she was receiving treatment for cancer. Charlotte Gallagher sent this report from Windsor, where the royal couple live.
Prince William and Catherine have said they've been extremely moved by the public's warmth and support. They added they were grateful for the understanding about their request for privacy for their family. And in Windsor, where the couple live, tourists and locals said they were thinking of them.
I think as moms, when we heard yesterday, it broke our heart because we have young kids, and that part's really tragic. As a fellow mom, I think everyone should just give her a little space. Obviously, the kids are going to have a really tough time with this.
They're going from something so private and hard, and the public eye on it is really tough.
It's believed Prince Harry and Meghan have contacted the Prince and Princess of Wales, as well as releasing a statement wishing Catherine health and healing. The Princess has also received support from world leaders such as President Biden and President Macron. Rishi Sunak Starmer have both sent their best wishes. Buckingham Palace is calling for privacy and wants to draw a line under the media storm that spiralled out of control in recent weeks.
The UN Secretary General has renewed his call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, saying it's time to silence the guns and stop the nightmare. Antonio Guterres, visiting the Egyptian side of the Rafah crossing, demanding Israel give an ironclad commitment to allow unrestricted aid to the territory. Our correspondent Hugo Chega was there.
On the Egyptian side of the Rafah crossing, convoys carrying basic supplies are waiting to enter Gaza, where the desperation grows. The UN says more than 1,500 lorries remain in Egypt. Some have been here for weeks. Western countries and charities have blamed Israel for inspections that are slow and arbitrary. They say entire deliveries have been turned away because they included items like medical scissors or sleeping bags that have been banned by the Israeli authorities. Visiting the border, UN Chief Antonio Guterres said Palestinians in Gaza were stuck in a non-stop nightmare.
Here from this crossing, we see the heartbreak and heartlessness of it all. A long line of blocked red relief trucks on one side of the gates, the long shadow of starvation on the other. That is more than tragic. It is a moral outrage.
His visit happened just days after a UN-backed report said half of Gaza's population of 2.2 million people face catastrophic levels of hunger. Speaking to the BBC, Mr. Guterres urged Israel to leave the obstacles to the delivery of aid.
Because these obstacles are taken, it is obvious that these obstacles are back and the way the war is being conducted is measured in Gaza.
The Israeli government rejects the criticism and says the UN has failed to distribute aid inside Gaza.
The Health Ministry in Gaza says 19 people have been killed by Israeli forces while waiting for aid on the outskirts of Gaza City. They're said to have been hit by tank fire and shelling at the roadside distribution point. The Israeli army has denied firing on the crowd. The authorities in Nigeria say 16 students and a woman kidnapped from a school in the northwest of the country a fortnight ago have been rescued. The army said a coordinated operation involving the military and government agencies and veterans has been cleared for ransom was paid. Damilola Taylor's father, Richard Taylor, who's been campaigning against knife crime since his 10-year-old son was killed, has died. He was 75 and had prostate cancer. Mr. Taylor set up a charity with his wife who named Damilola, or Attract as the details.
Damilola Taylor was on his way home from the library in Peckham in East London in November 2000 when he was attacked and stabbed with a broken bottle. The 10-year-old boy was left bleeding to death in a stairwell. It took 3 Crown Court trials and 6 years before two brothers, Ricky and Danny Craig, who were 12 and 13 at the time of the killing, were jailed for manslaughter. A year after Damilola's death, Richard Taylor, a former Nigerian civil servant, and his wife Gloria set up the Damilola Taylor Trust to campaign against knife crime. In 2008, Gloria died after suffering a heart attack, but Richard Taylor continued their work. He said he wanted his son to be remembered as a boy of hope and for his legacy to be a better life and opportunities for underprivileged young people. But he said his loss never diminished.
I still break down. I still feel in such a difficult situation that for the rest of my life I have to live with it.
In a statement, his family said he had died at the age of 75 following a long battle with prostate cancer. The Metropolitan Police said the legacy of his work would continue.
In sport, England has lost their friendly match against Brazil at Wembley. The Women's Six Nations wins for Scotland and France. Joanna King has a full cap.
While both sides were below strength, it was Brazil who made the immediate breakthrough with a 1-0 win. The 17-year-old and the youngest man to score a senior career goal at Wembley for the home country. As for England, Southgate says they have to think how they can create new chances and take care of the future.
Well, I think with 10 minutes to go, we were thinking we've played pretty well here.
we've more than held our own, and it's that one ruthless moment that turns the game, which we weren't able to find in the penalty area, and they've managed on that break.
Elsewhere, England's opponents on Tuesday, Belgium were held to a goalless draw by the Republic of Ireland. In the Women's Super League, Manchester City beat Manchester United 3-1 at the Etihad. They have a 3-point lead over second-place Chelsea, who play tomorrow. Goal scorer Khadija Shaw says they feel confident they can take the title for the first time since 2016.
Yeah, of course, for us, first and foremost, we have to focus on ourselves because, if we don't go out and keep pushing and get the results, then we don't have a time for us to look forward to. So I think firstly, we focus on ourselves, do all the things that we can do, score as much as we can. Of course, we're disappointed with, conceding that goal, but yeah, we focus on ourselves and then we see what happens at the end of the season.
Also in football, Chesterfield have been promoted back to the English Football League with 5 games to spare in the National League. The Rugby Union and Scotland have survived a late Wales comeback to win a women's Six Nations match on Welsh soil for the first time in 20 years. They finished 20 points to 18 and it was their 7th win in a row. Here's their captain, Rachel Malcolm.
This is the tightest squad I've ever been a part of, and I think, to now go out and create history in South Africa and create history here today, this is a team who are taking Scotland women places, and I'm just super proud to be a part of it, super proud to be there, but they make my job so easy, so a pleasure.
Earlier, France ran in 5 tries in beating Ireland, while Saracens have enjoyed a 52-7 Premiership win over Harlequins. Exeter Chiefs beat Newcastle. Scarlets and Leinster won in the United Rugby Championship. And Red Bull's Max Verstappen will be on pole position for tomorrow morning's Australian Grand Prix ahead of Ferrari's Carlos Sainz.
Joining a British runner has become the first woman to complete one of the world's hardest ultramarathons. Jasmine Paris, who's a 40-year-old vet from Midlothian,